This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Slashes, huh? What's your favorite scary movie?
Not that one.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking Abdul, Muhammad, Bob. We're talking that happens a lot around here. And we're talking juicy. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking what is a place like me doing in a girl like this?
Oh, she's so drunk and so cute.
Joe, I am so embarrassed. Like, how many times have we been, has someone asked us on our show, or have we been on another show, and they're like, how did you get into horror? What was your gateway horror? And, my go-to answer is Scooby-Doo, because that is very, very, very true. And
sure.
We're covering Stephen Sommers' 1999 classic, The Mummy, for its 25th anniversary. I watched this movie at least 100 times when I was a teenager. Like, this was such like formative gateway horror to my development as a horror fan. I can't believe I forgot that, and then I never bring it up when we have these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably coming in a little bit later than when you were watching Scooby-Doo, so I think that answer definitely still applies. But yeah, this is just so much fun.
It's a perfect blend of action, adventure, horror, romance, and comedy. No notes. We can stop the recording and be done with it.
No, we have to talk about the bisexual awakening it has inspired in people.
Yes, but before we can go too far, we have to bring in our guest who's waiting in the wings. So, all right, everyone, he is a singer-songwriter heavily influenced by music and cinema from the 80s and 90s, incorporating elements of new disco, synth pop, dance, and house music. He has released 4 studio albums, with his most recent being 2020's Fun City. He composed the score for the 2023 film All Man, The International Male Story, and you can also check out his new album, Enjoy Youth, when it comes out on May 17th. Please welcome Rod Thomas, who records under the pseudonym Bright Light, Bright Light.
Hello.
Ooh. Hello. Welcome to Horror Queers, Rod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, okay, so you picked The Mummy when we sent you a list of options for you, and I'm curious why.
Well, I'll tell you why. A few weeks prior to your email, me and my friend were at home one night after a DJ set, and we were going to put on... I think it was Marnie. I have Marnie on VHS. So I watch movies on VHS. But as the VHS started, the trailer for The Mummy came on, and we were like, fuck, we really want to watch The Mummy. So we stopped and we put The Mummy on, and it was amazing. And then 4 days later, Alamo Drafthouse announced that they were screening The Mummy, and we were like, what? And then a week later, Nighthawk said that they were screening The Mummy, and I was like, what? And then a week later, I got your email asking to pick a film, and The Mummy was on it, and I was like, I think The Mummy has chosen me.
Correct. Yes.
So there you go. That's why.
Do you remember if you saw this in theaters?
Oh my God. I don't remember if I saw it in the theaters. I have a feeling that I did. And I have a feeling that my dad might have taken me to see this, or I might have seen it like on a Saturday afternoon with friends. I definitely saw it when it came out, and I don't think it was on VHS. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the cinema.
Joe, what about you?
So this is when I was actually working at the movie theater. So I got to work the premiere of this in this gorgeous like downtown revival theater in Calgary. And it was honestly one of the best premieres. This movie killed it with preview audiences. The atmosphere was just so much fun. And yeah, I mean, working a movie is different than actually getting to watch a movie, but it was definitely like, what is going on in there? The people are going wild. And so I went and saw it the next day when it was actually available to everybody. And my sister and I went, had the best fucking time. I think we went back and saw this at least 2 or 3 more times in theaters. Like, just such a good time.
Yeah, I definitely saw this twice in theaters at least. Because I was 10 when this came out. And so, like, basically, like, the way my brain worked, because I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies, you know, we would get trailers for movies, you know, up to 6 months in advance of the film's release, but they would get rated until like a month beforehand normally. And so I would see horror movie trailers and just pray to God that they would be PG-13 so I could go see them. And this was one of them. Although I gotta say, like, there's some shit in this movie that I am surprised made its way into a PG-13 film.
I'm also surprised. I thought it was... I thought it was like a 15 in the UK. So we have a slightly different rating system. It's like you have PG and then I think it's 12 and then 15 and 18. And I'm pretty sure that I went to see it when I was slightly underage and I thought it was a 15, but I must be very wrong then.
I mean, it's a thing where like, and you know, like, granted, I watched because there is quite a few special features on the disc for this film, but all of them are pretty much devoted solely to the special effects, which...
Yeah, they were a big deal.
They're amazing.
And honestly, I mean, it's funny because Stephen Sommers hired ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, because he had just worked with them on Deep Rising. And it's so interesting to look at like the night and day differences between the special effects in Deep Rising and the ones in The Mummy. Or even look at The Mummy versus The Mummy Returns.
Yeah, and folks, if you want to hear about the disaster that is the special effects in Deep Rising, we do have a Patreon episode on it. And Trace went to great detail to outline it's not Stephen Sommers' fault that movie's special effects look like garbage. Like, it was messed around with a bunch.
A bunch. But yeah, The Mummy rules, 5 stars. We'll get into the bisexuality of it. But I've got quite a bit of a production history here because this is one of those things, Joe, where I started doing research and then I was like, oh, there's a lot of information out there about this movie.
Right. Which I guess makes sense because this is a remake, of course, of the Universal classic. But yeah, I didn't realize that this was going to be one of those weird movies where it seems like a bunch of people took a crack at it.
Yes. So, okay, for this, I'm pulling from 3 different sources. I've got Snakes, Sandstorms, and Strangulation, the making of 1999's The Mummy. This is written by Clark Collis for Entertainment Weekly. I've got George Romero and Clive Barker almost directed The Mummy remakes in the 90s, written for Bloody Disgusting by John Squires. And How Clive Barker's original Hellraiser 3 pitch evolved into The Mummy, written for Bloody Disgusting by Nat Bremer. Who would have thought? All this stuff on Bloody Disgusting, Joe. Okay, so y'all bear with me here because this is going to be a journey. So in the late 80s, producers Sean Daniel and James Jacks. Joe, you may remember him from our Tremors episode as the big champion of Tremors.
Oh, okay.
They decided to update the original 1932 Mummy film for the modern era. Universal said, sure, go ahead, but we're going to give you a $10 million budget.
Sure, right.
Spoiler alert, this movie cost a lot more than $10 million. But they essentially wanted a low-budget horror franchise, and so they actually first went to George A. Romero to write a film treatment, and he did so in 1987, and the basic premise for that was, you know, scientists inadvertently bring a Terminator-like mummy to life. I saw, because there's a couple different, you know, iterations of this, they kept referring to it as a Terminator-like mummy, and I don't know why. I guess maybe just because it was 87, so Terminator was really popular by then?
Right. Yeah, I guess. So what is an unkillable machine? I'm using air quotes. That's top of mind for everybody. Yeah, Terminator.
But Romero was also going to direct, but eventually this was abandoned because it just, you know, didn't work out. I couldn't find a specific reason for this, but it just seems like, you know, couldn't agree on shit.
Right. Okay.
Jackson Daniel went to Clive Barker next. Okay, so this is where I have the most story here. So He had just had a major hit with Hellraiser, because again, we're in 87 still, but Barker was hired in 1990 to write and direct The Mummy for Universal, and he wrote a script with Mick Garris that would have been much more of its own bizarre, metaphysical, and psychosexual thing.
Naturally.
Not the movie we got here.
No.
Okay, so here's the Hellraiser 3 connection. And Rod, have you seen Hellraiser 3? And if so, have you seen it relatively...
Oh my God, who do you think I am? I've seen them all millions of times. I love Hellraiser.
Okay.
Rod, we're going to be the best of friends.
How fucking dare you think that I haven't seen Hellraiser 3?
I feel like it's recently become cool to like all the Hellraiser films, because I'm telling you, 5 years ago, no one gave a shit about any of them past 2.
8 years ago, and me and my friends watched Hellraiser 3 on Christmas Day. That was our Christmas Day movie, and it was absolutely iconic.
Okay, well, this is going to be fun for both of you. In case you don't know, Joe is a major Hellraiser stan. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So, this has ties to Hellraiser 3, because if you remember, it took years to get Hellraiser 3 off the ground because of a change in ownership from New World to Transatlantic Entertainment. So, Barker also had trouble coming up with a concept for that film, so his original pitch for Hellraiser 3, which I don't remember if we said this in our Hellraiser 3 episode, Joe, because this doesn't sound familiar, but it says, okay, the idea was to go back to the beginning and explore the origins of the Cenobites themselves. So the idea was a Hellraiser movie set partly in ancient Egypt, in which it is revealed that the very first Cenobite was an overly curious pharaoh. Now, the mummy of that pharaoh would be dug up in the 90s and put on display in a museum. The objects found within a tomb, when placed in the right order, would form a pattern and, bring him to life, kind of like the Lament configuration.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, interesting. I can definitely see it.
Well, eventually, Barker decided he didn't like that as the basis for a Hellraiser movie. Now, it is thought he saw potential for a whole new Barkarian mythology in that plot and wanted to keep it clean, since by this point, his role in the Hellraiser franchise was diminishing, one day at a time.
Right, yeah.
So, when Universal nabbed him to write the remake, he centered it around a cult called Sithis that was attempting to restore power over the Western world by reawakening the ancient gods. The Mummy was used as the starting place for the horror, and that the Mummy itself had little to do with the actual antagonists of the film. The building in Barker's The Mummy would have been decorated with pyramidic symbols that unlocked the key to the horror and the resurrection of these ancient worlds and beings. The concept of a building decorated and built out of powerful patterns and symbols would obviously show up at the end of Hellraiser 3 and serve as a major plot point in Hellraiser Bloodline.
Which is ironic, because he basically didn't have a foot in the franchise at that point.
No, yeah. I mean, I think he's only really producer stuff by Hellraiser 3 because they moved away from his vision.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm bearing the lead here, because this is not even the most interesting part of Barker's Mummy. In his film, there would have been a transgender central character.
Oh.
Now, I don't know how this kind of weaves into the actual plot I just read, but this is what I got. In the first scene of his story, a strange boy child, I'm using quotes there, is born under circumstances that suggest something unnatural is afoot, the circumstances being high howling winds and ferocious thunderstorms upon the birth. The narrative then jumps ahead 20 years or so, and they pick up the story of how sacred Egyptian artifacts are being brought to America for an exhibition that would put the Tutankhamun exhibit to shame. Eventually, an uncommonly beautiful woman is threaded into the action, a seducer and murderer of mysterious origin. Of the boy child, now presumably grown to adulthood, we get no sight. Meanwhile, the film's anti-heroine is seducing her way through the male characters, only to be revealed in the third act as the boy child, now turned via surgery and hormones into a woman.
Interesting.
Nobody in America, they were told, would accept such a ridiculous premise.
Oh my God.
Some people said it was too perverted to work. So they parted ways.
Okay, interesting. So this is basically just contemporary American politics, is what you're saying.
Very much.
Well, and I've seen a lot, because I had no idea about any of this. I feel like a horrible horror fan, but I've seen people, when The Mummy had its 20th anniversary 5 years ago, saying, oh, now is the time to make Clive Barker's The Mummy, which I still think we're never going to get it, but it's a nice thought.
Here's the thing. Make that movie, just don't call it The Mummy.
Yeah. Call it Boy Child.
Boy Child.
Oh, God.
Mary's Boy Child.
Okay, so that didn't work out. Next up, Alan Ormsby, the screenwriter of Popcorn, a definite coming soon for us, Joe. He was brought on next. And again, we're going back into Terminator-type territory here. They keep referring to this mummy as the Terminator. At this point, Joe Dante was attached to direct this film.
Okay.
Ormsby's screenplay was later rewritten by John Sayles, the screenwriter of Alligator and The Howling. And it was set in contemporary times and focused on reincarnation with elements of a love story. This came the closest to being made, and some elements, like the flesh-eating scarabs, would make it to the final product. But at this point, Universal still wanted a low-budget film, so they balked at the price tag and said, nope, we're not doing this.
Right. Okay.
Okay, 1994. Romero comes back to the project.
The circular thing. People come on a project and then they leave, and then they come back to it and then they leave.
Yeah, so his version was more like kind of a zombie-style horror film, reminiscent of Night of the Living Dead. There's a Wikipedia page entirely of George Romero projects that didn't come to fruition, because this is also around the same time he would have been doing, I guess he would have been doing Resident Evil, yeah, but he would move on to Resident Evil after this.
Yeah, I think Romero just had a lot of ideas. He was so involved in igniting the zombie craze. I think everybody thought, ooh, if we could only get Romero on this project.
Yeah, so his script was considered too dark, and then they were trying to tweak it, but Romero was stuck in a contract deal with MGM, so he didn't have time to do anything, so he left, and an entirely new script was commissioned.
Okay.
All right, Mick Garris comes back in 1995.
Stop it.
He developed a script that combined elements of the original 1932 film and 1942's The Mummy's Tomb. Again, proved too expensive, and the studio said, no, we need to do a modern setting. We cannot do a period piece.
None of this is true.
Okay, now for the studio stuff. So we should thank Babe Pig in the City for this movie, actually. So, around this time, Universal was sold to Seagram. Universal president and CEO Sidney Sheinberg chose to produce The Mummy through his independent company and write a new script. But he was unable to find a suitable high-profile writer and director. Wes Craven was even offered to direct, and he said no. The project unraveled again, and Garris left the project for a second time, but it was at this time that Stephen Sommers had just finished Deep Rising, and he had heard Universal had parted ways with another writer-director, because he kept trying to get into this Mummy gig, but every time they were like, no, we've already got Romero. No, we've already got Clive Barker. No, we've got Mick Garris.
Right.
So, he finally submits something. Jackson Daniel took him right into Universal. One of the first things he said was, nobody wants to see a guy wrapped in bandages. They're going to laugh at it. Jax told him, well, hey, we kind of like where you're going, but the studio wants to do it for $15 million. And Sommers replied, I'm going to need that for visual effects alone. And that supposedly is what they spent on the visual effects for this film.
That's probably lowball for the special effects in this movie.
Everything I found says $15 million for the special effects. But here's the thing, though. Every budget I've seen reported for this film was $80 million. However, in the oral history piece, Stephen Sommers said this film cost $62 million.
Yeah, which is a huge discrepancy.
Yeah, unless they're counting marketing in with that $80 million budget, but I don't know.
We don't normally do that. Yeah.
No. So, okay. After the box office disappointment of Babe, Pig in the City, which, by the way...
I'm going to interject here. I cannot fucking believe that Babe was a flop. I was obsessed with that. Babe, Pig in the City was a gigantic film where I grew up.
Well,
that was a huge film.
Do you like it more than the original Babe?
Yes.
Okay, so I have seen... I've actually never seen Babe or Babe, Pig in the City because... I know... Wait, Rod, can you guess, if you haven't already looked at the answer, can you guess what the budget was for Babe, Pig in the City?
I just looked. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Joe, can you guess?
It's massive, isn't it? Isn't it something like 60 or 80?
$90 million.
Ooh.
Wow.
And worldwide, it made $69 million. So this was a huge flop for them.
Yeah.
So it sucks. And yes, by all accounts, from what I've heard, Babe, Pig in the City is actually better than Babe. So you have company, Rod.
I mean, I grew up in a very rural place, so it was, just kind of very en vogue. I'm from a farming background, so it kind of made sense to me. Also, they didn't show all the films where I'm from, so that was a hit in Neath.
There you go. But so yeah, Universal needed a hit. And at the time, Universal's management had changed in response to those box office failures. And again, this Seagram deal. The losses led the studio to revisit its successful franchises from the 30s. And so Sommers was like, holy shit, have I got an idea for y'all? Submits an 18-page treatment positioning the mummy as a kind of Indiana Jones or Jason and the Argonauts riff, with the mummy as the creature giving the hero a quote-unquote hard time.
Not untrue.
Universal liked the treatment so much that they approved the concept and increased the budget, and Sommers spent a year working on the screenplay. Which, oh my god, like a year?
Well, it's a big task, right? Because, I mean, we are talking about increasing a budget from $10 or $15 million all the way up to, like, what, 3 times, 4 times potentially higher?
Mm-hmm. Okay, principal photography begins in May of 98 and it lasts 17 weeks. They were unable to shoot actually in Egypt due to unstable political conditions, so they began filming in Marrakesh, Morocco. After that, they moved to the Sahara Desert for the exteriors of Hamunaptra. All of the scenes involving the underground passageways of Hamunaptra were shot at Shepperton Studios in England, but these sets took 16 weeks to build. So I imagine while they were shooting the 17 weeks in Marrakesh, everyone else was in England, like, building these tunnels.
Right.
Wow.
But yeah, so again, special effects, big fucking deal here. Reportedly, they spent $15 million on the effects alone. The Mummy features hundreds of shots that required optical or digital special effects in post-production. Most of the effects were done by ILM, who contributed more than 140 shots at $125,000 per shot.
Oof.
I also learned that they charge extra for effect shots where the camera is moving. So when Stephen Sommers was planning out and storyboarding, he had to think about which shots he could actually move the camera and which ones he couldn't based on the budget.
That is not a great way to make a movie.
I mean, and that's why it's kind of surprising it turns out as well as it does, right?
Yeah.
I think it's amazing.
Oh, yeah. How do you think that the effects hold up today, Rod?
You know, I think they're amazing. I think they're timeless, classic, iconic, perfect. Linda Evangelista. I actually was genuinely shocked rewatching it. I haven't seen it for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really impressed by how it holds up, I think. You know, obviously it's a little cheesy and some of it is like a little bit Windows 95.
Yeah.
But overall, some of it looks great.
I'm inclined to agree. I mean, it's a thing where everything that is CGI, you could tell it's CGI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe it's because of like that perfect balance of tone that Sommers has made with this movie that I kind of don't care. Like, I never for once am taken out by the effects. Like, I still feel like the mummy is actually there in the scenes, which is more than I can say for the Scorpion King and the Mummy Returns, you know?
Yeah. I would say watch it on VHS like I did, and you don't notice.
Oh, there you go.
Everything looks great.
That's a really good point, though, because honestly, the more high definition things get, the shittier those 90s effects start to look.
I find that with every film that I've seen, I have lots of friends that have like these HD TVs and they're massive and they have like such high definition. And I feel like every film made earlier than a couple of years ago looks dreadful.
Looks like garbage.
I just don't understand. Like, it does something. The depth perception changes and everything looks wrong. I don't get it.
I think we're also seeing them with like lighter screens. So you know how a lot of CGI heavy films are often done
quite dark.
In darkness?
Yeah.
I think there's a lightening that we do, particularly when we get these 4K remastered. It's like sometimes it's not for the best. And that was why I sounded hesitant, is because, some of the CGI just hasn't held up particularly well. But I do agree with both of you that I think whole sections of this continue to look great, and or it's that right amount of cartoony cheese that is fitting in with the film's tone. Yeah,
the tone I think is perfect for what it achieves and what it continues to achieve. Like, it's we'll get to it. I have my opinions. I don't know what type of film it is, but that's my blanket statement.
Well, interestingly enough, Sommers engaged ILM while developing the script because he had previously worked with him again, on Deep Rising. ILM provided and produced a proof of concept for the mummy's effects in late 1997 to demonstrate the feasibility of Sommers' vision to executives, and they started developing the look of the mummy 3 months before filming started. And I will tell you, there's a 49-minute documentary on this Blu-ray that is solely about making the mummy himself.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's actually really funny because so they did The Mummy and they did all of the shooting first, but then they did have Arnold Vosloo go and do motion capture. But it's such a new concept at this time. So when they're saying, they're like, oh yeah, we're doing this thing called motion capture.
Which you've never heard of.
Video games weren't there yet.
No.
But score, had no idea about this. Jerry Goldsmith is here for the score. Joe, after all the Omens we did last month, I'm surprised that we're getting Goldsmith again. But yeah, I love the score. Very bombastic. Doesn't have a ton of chorals like his scores usually do, but he's also working with 5 different subgenres here.
Do you think his scores usually have chorals?
I guess maybe I'm thinking of the Omen specifically.
You're just thinking of the Omen.
I know. I'm just thinking of the Omen.
Yeah, because I'm a big fan of his, and I don't remember. I can't name one really that has chorals besides the Omen. But that's a very kind of religious kind of tone, right? Like
that's
everything
true.
else is very either kind of very like chintzy keyboards or like gorgeous strings and piano. Like that's an interesting take.
Oh, that's right. Your music. Oh my God.
I was going to say, Rod, you can just
Sorry.
read Trace because Trace has a terrible musical ear.
I'm bad. I'm bad with music.
Oh no, I'm not reading it. It's just I listen to his scores a lot, like the Chinatown, Total Recall, Gremlins is where I get my name from. My artist name is from Gremlins. Like all of his stuff, the Alien scores. Like I don't really think of him as choral.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too because Basic Instinct isn't really choral. You know what? I will put my foot in my mouth.
Well, actually, I think you already have them. We're encouraging you to take it out.
That fits in with like a bisexual propensity, and let's just go for it. Let's just do everything.
Let's do it.
A little bit of everything. Yeah.
Okay, so they filmed this. When they started test screening it, no one had any interest in it based on the title alone. It apparently, shocking, reminded them of an old horror film, and that was deemed boring. Now,
Jesus.
I've never been to I don't know how these test screenings work, but based on how they're describing this, it sounds like they just have a test screening theater, and people go and they can sign up for whatever movie they want to go see based on the title alone.
Ew, The Mummy. No, I don't want to see that.
It just sounds like
shut
a room
up.
of
Have you even
twats.
seen a poster or an image or a trailer?
Or maybe they don't get to choose. Maybe that's the problem. You know, it's like I did it for the first time the other day. I did the AMC go and you see a film that you don't know what it is until the credits start. And I feel like you wouldn't go and test a film called The Mummy if you hated the title. You wouldn't go, right?
I guess so. I mean, I just thought that they were it's boring. And I was like, but, I mean...
It's not boring.
Don't you want to know? The Mummy, what is he going to do? What is he going to...
What is he going to
look like?
Is it a she? Is it the mother? You know, could there be a twist?
The Mummy's mother.
Well, we did get that movie in 2017.
We did, yes.
Let's not.
I actually I have never seen it. I meant to watch it because I just want to... It's one of those things where I've heard so many bad things about it that I'm kind of is it that bad?
I don't mind it. Actually, I'll be perfectly honest. I don't mind it.
I just find it super boring. I don't think it's very exciting.
I was 3 gin and tonics in on a plane, and I had a fantastic time.
Okay.
I find this is the Tom Cruise one, right?
Yes. The Tom Cruise one.
I feel like Tom Cruise, much like Jennifer Aniston, produce excellent plane movies. And I feel like when my brain needs to really take the back seat and I just want something to watch, all of their films deliver every single time. And The Mummy 2017 was a delicious Virgin Atlantic third gin and tonic.
Turn your brain off.
Film. Yeah, it was fabulous.
I do wonder, and again, as someone who's never seen the film, I do wonder how it would play without, because again, I remember when that came out, it was all about, it's the Dark Universe, we're starting all this stuff. I wonder, removed from all that, if the film would play better just as a movie that you just happen to be watching. But
Ooh, that is quite possible. I remember, I'm actually a relatively decent sized fan of Tom Cruise. I like his movies. I found him miscast. He was distracting because he was Tom Cruise in the film, and it felt like we needed a Brendan Fraser, hot person who's going to anchor this, but also isn't going to pull focus with the star power.
I will agree with that, actually, yes. Because he is so renowned as a specific type of character actor in action movies that it didn't feel like the right fit.
Yeah, it's Ethan Hunt versus the Mummy.
But I'll give you that.
Well, it's okay. I will watch it one of these days, and I'll let you know what I think, Rob.
Yeah, next time you're on a transatlantic flight, put it on.
Yeah, actually, on my next flight, I'll just tell them, excuse me.
Can I speak to the pilot, please? Why is the Mummy 2017 not on your programming?
Truly.
But, okay, so because of this title, there were actually thoughts to change it. But the domestic marketing president, Mark Schmooger, recalled that they decided to redefine the myth with the film rather than change the title, which, thank God.
That is bold. That is a bold claim.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it didn't sound like they had a lot of faith in it at this point until the Super Bowl of 1999, because they took out a 30-second spot, which I watched, by the way. It's horrible quality, but they use score from Bram Stoker's Dracula and Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet in it, and it's just like a 30-second montage of like stuff in the movie with those two scores, and holy moly.
Got you excited?
Well, immediately after that Super Bowl spot aired, it reversed discussions on the film's prospects. Like, everyone was like, "Oh my god!" It was all of a sudden the buzz of the town. So now that they were confident, they realized, "Oh shit! Our movie is coming out on May 21st, which is 2 days after Star Wars: The Phantom Menace is supposed to come out." So
yeah,
they moved it up a few weeks to May 7th, where it was the only new release. To which I was like, "Why wasn't it
there?"
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. We have to remember, even back in 99, dear Lord, it is a quarter of a century ago, we didn't have faith in the May box office starting early.
Because school was still going on.
Mm-hmm. So it's only like basically 99 was one of the years that helped redefine what a summer box office could look like, and it could start earlier.
Well, this turned out to be a very smart decision. The Mummy opened in the number one spot with $43 million. And let me tell you, they were expecting $20 million. So at the time, this was the highest non-holiday May opening of all time. It was the 9th biggest opening of all time, period.
Oh my God. 90s, I love you. I miss you.
A Universal representative told Stephen Sommers that the film's opening was so strong that it literally saved the studio.
Wow. That is outrageous. I'm obsessed with that.
Right? It stayed in the number one spot its second weekend because there were 4 other new releases, but the widest being the Rupert Everett Midsummer Night's Dream, which had like exactly 1,000 screens. So,
boy. That was meant to be the calm before the summer box office season began with Phantom Menace.
Yes. And The Mummy was on like 3,200 screens, so there was no competition. So yeah, it does really well. It drops to second place its third weekend when The Phantom Menace came out, which makes sense, but it stayed in the top 10 for 9 weeks.
Yes, legs.
It grossed $155 million domestically and $261 million internationally for a worldwide gross of $416 million.
Absolutely amazing.
And we launch a franchise, baby.
And you'll hear me shit on The Mummy Returns a lot tonight because even though I think it's an entertaining movie, but it's that perfect balance I was talking about. Like, we remove a lot of the horror in The Mummy Returns in favor of more like action adventure comedy, and I think it really throws off the film.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, and this is gonna shock no one who's a regular listener. I think the kid kind of fucks it because it becomes all about the kid.
Rod, what are your thoughts on The Mummy Returns? Because I haven't heard you grunt or anything.
I don't have strong feelings about The Mummy Returns. I think I've seen that twice, to be honest. I enjoyed it. I could watch any of these films at any given time, but I don't gravitate towards it. I always gravitate towards this one, which is, a lot of the major franchises, like, for example, Hellraiser, I much prefer Hellbound. And Batman, I prefer Batman Returns. Yep. And Nightmare on Elm Street, I prefer Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or 4.
Yep.
And, Friday the 13th, the second one is one of my favorites. Yep. So it's very rare that the first one becomes my diehard choice. But between The Mummy and Mummy Returns, it's definitely the Mummy.
I will say The Mummy Returns made more money than The Mummy, which is surprising to me.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
No, me neither, because it's got the goodwill from the first film, so everybody comes back.
I think I remember Rachel Weisz being extremely annoying in The Mummy Returns, whereas I found her pretty hilariously annoying in The Mummy.
They give her more of an action thing. Because they did this stupid thing in The Mummy Returns where they make like she's the reincarnation of someone from the ancient Egyptian times, and so she knew a Noxuna moon back then, and it doesn't make any sense. I will say, so I like you, Rod, I also hadn't revisited this film very often recently, but I did buy like the Mummy collection Blu-ray set when it came out, which has Mummy Returns, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, and Scorpion King, and I had never seen Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
I've never seen it.
Okay, here's the thing.
Is Maria Bello any good?
Okay, I really like Maria Bello.
That's not a noise of
no.
I like Maria Bello. I don't
sure. She's
think
great.
She's great in that movie. I will say, I think I might prefer it to The Mummy Returns, if only because it doesn't feel as bloated as that movie. Yeah, Jet Li is the villain, so we at least we lose Arnold Vosloo and Patricia Velasquez, but I don't know. I think there's some fun adventure-y set pieces, like there's Yetis when they go to a snow area. Jet Li has an army of clay statues. There's stuff that is fun in it, and the kid is aged up to a 20-year-old.
Oh, perfect.
But yes, we lose Rachel Weisz, but we at least do get Brendan Fraser back, so that's something. So it's not a great movie, but I would say it's better than Mummy Returns, personally.
Okay.
All right. I mean, do they outrace the sun? That's all I need to know.
Well. Critically, The Mummy received mixed reviews, which I was surprised by. I remember this having a much warmer reception, but we're looking at a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 5.9 out of 10. It's got a 48 out of 100 on Metacritic. CinemaScore audiences at the time gave it a B, but Letterboxd users have given it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, that's correct. Letterboxd.
Okay,
you're bringing it back.
When you say 7 out of 10, how is that? Because it's out of 5.
Oh, I just doubled the score, so it's a 3.5 out of 5.
Right.
He always does it. I've never quite understood why he insists on doubling everything.
I'm not a simpleton. I do understand maths, and I do understand doubling a number, but I was like, it's like a rogue choice to change the scoring system.
The only reason I did that, it's because when we first started the podcast, I would always do the Letterboxd right after the Rotten Tomatoes, and because the Rotten Tomatoes, the average score is out of 10.
Oh, I see.
I just did the same thing for Letterboxd to make the comparison more easily comparable, I guess.
Wait. Isn't Rotten Tomatoes out of 100?
No. So that's the actual aggregate score that's out of 100. But if you click the score to see what the average score is, because the aggregate score is, if it has a 94%, 94% of critics gave this film a positive review. But if you click the average score, it'll tell you the average of their actual scores. So while The Mummy had a 61% aggregate score, the average score when you click on it is a 5.9 out of 10.
America needs to stop with all of these different charts.
Well, but that's what makes it so confusing, because people look at 61% and they're like, yay, that's a good score. I mean, well, this one isn't a good example because they're actually pretty close. But, you can have a movie that has 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the average score is like a 6 out of 10 because critics were giving it a 3 out of 5.
Right.
And that's still positive.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's good intel. Thank you. I've learned something.
The aggregate thing, it throws everything off, but it's the easiest, fastest
I feel like this is giving me like electoral college, like whiplash.
Kind of,
Truly.
It's a little bit like that, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, again, yes, Rotten Tomatoes does not do a good job, I don't think, of explaining to people how it works, but
I just hated that people in North Carolina get to vote on Rotten Tomatoes first. That's all I'm saying.
But okay,
wow.
That is my long-winded production history. So let's talk about what actually happens in this film.
All right, so we begin with sweeping CGI aerials of Thebes.
Can I also interject?
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with a single person not knowing what happens in this fucking film. It's amazing. I feel like in my small brain, I feel like everyone in the world has watched The Mummy. So I feel like I would be explaining what happens in Titanic to somebody if I was like, oh, do you know what happens in The Mummy? And I forget that some people haven't watched this film.
We have learned over the 6 years that we have been doing this that we are old.
I think that's it. In my brain, I feel like, oh, these are classics.
Mm-hmm.
And then to some people, they're like, what is that? And then it makes me shrink back into my crypt.
I saw someone post today because recently that trailer for the M. Night Shyamalan movie Trap came out with Josh Hartnett, and someone tweeted, they were like, someone at my work didn't know who Josh Hartnett was.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're just old, and I think now at least we a lot of our listeners who have never seen a film, they'll actually watch the film when we cover it. So I actually hope that a good chunk of our listeners who have not seen this film are discovering it for the first time.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Right.
Oh my God. Anybody that hasn't seen this film, oh my God, I'm so jealous of you. I'm so jealous of you. The watching it for the first time was so fun.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, you're going to die.
But that's the thing, though, because I wonder how it plays for people who have seen, let's say the last 20 years of movies, and they missed 1999. So how does this play when you've seen all the movies that have imitated it?
Oh, it's so much better.
Well.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much better.
By the way, Joe, this opening shot took 2 years to develop and cost $200,000.
Oh, boy. and this is, I think, one of those things, I think, Rod, you mentioned, it's like, but like a Windows screensaver, like, this looks fine, you understand what it is, but it's not great.
I think it's better when the camera's moving because all these people that we're seeing are CGI as well.
Well, of course they are, yes.
Iconic.
There's no
Absolutely
denying
fantastic.
that.
Well, it's because they were paying that extra fee for the moving camera.
God.
Okay, so yes, this is 1290 BC in Thebes, and we are immediately introduced to the forbidden love affair between the high priest Imhotep, who is played by Arnold Vosloo, as well as Anck-su-namun, who is played by Patricia Velasquez, and she is the future bride of Pharaoh Seti I, who is played by Aharon Apale.
I will say, I forgot that Patricia Velasquez is only in this scene of the movie.
Yeah, because I mean, her mummified corpse is obviously, well, not obviously, it could be played by anybody.
Well, it is played by someone, but not Patricia Velasquez.
Yeah, I guess one of the other things, we'll get it out of the way now because it's just a little uncomfortable. There's not a single Egyptian person in this cast. They're coming from India, they're coming from Israel, they're coming from South Africa. So yeah, there's like...
I was going to say Arnold Vosloo is a white South African.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he sure
I
is.
also feel people might have seen Stargate, and you could apply the same logic to that.
Mm-hmm. 100%. This is what we did back in the 90s. It doesn't excuse it, but...
Any American film that represents non-white people, they're probably all white.
Yes, we quite like whitewashing in Hollywood.
This is interesting, though, because they had an actual, Egyptologist on set because they helped them, because no one's spoken ancient Egyptian in 3,000 years. And so they had this guy on set to, go through the script and, check out, historical accuracy, but also help decipher the language as how they best thought it would have sounded.
Wow, that's cool. Okay. That sounds like that would cost a lot more than hiring an Egyptian actor.
Right?
Call me crazy, but call me crazy.
Okay, I was gonna wait till we meet this character, but I'll say this now because so Omid Jalili, who plays Warden God Hassan, when he was auditioning, he said, I have an Iranian background, so I was very aware that if I ever did film roles, I had to represent Middle Eastern culture.
Yeah.
This was at a time where there were very few Middle Eastern roles at all that were not terrorists. So, Stephen Sommers told him, well, we're looking for a kind of Rifki from Midnight Express. Now, that character in that film was a Turkish warden who was really evil. And Jalili said, look, why don't we play him differently? Because with all due respect to you, what you've written is not even one-dimensional. I can possibly get this to a two-dimensional stereotype. So he improvised a piece that wasn't in the script, and Sommers said that he liked it, but wondered why if it had to be so funny. And Jalili replied, the only way I can do this without being lynched by my own people is to make it slightly humorous.
And here's the thing, his comedic take works well in keeping with the rest of the film. So, I think it's a smart decision. I would definitely say this is a two-dimensional stereotype, but I mean, really, this is a movie that's trafficking in a lot of that. So if you approach it with your 2024, sort of progressive lens, the movie is doing some pretty shallow characterization.
I just think it's really ballsy of him, just in his audition, to be like, with all due respect, dude, you've written a one-dimensional stereotype.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea that he comes in and says no. Is that ballsy,
or is it more ballsy to not change the one-dimensional stereotype and yet continue with it? That's wild. I feel like if somebody told me that about my writing, I'd be like, wow, that's a red flag. I need to do something.
I think that makes sense now, but in 1999, I guess I'm just kind of surprised because I feel like this would have been easy for him to be like that's a risk, right? To say that you might lose the job.
You probably would.
Well, but my point is if maybe somebody told you that about your script, would you be like, wow, is this really offensive?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Not just cool.
And Stephen Sommers seems like a pretty chill guy, so.
But it also took him a year to write the script, so maybe he said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to change anything because I need to go into production on this, bitch."
I spent a year on this one-dimensional stereotype.
Yeah, you've spent a year writing something and someone goes, "That's just racist." And you're like,
Ooh.
"Oh, I thought I was Shakespeare." Which is also quite racist, to be honest. Anyway, continuing with the story.
Yes. Okay. So Pharaoh said he does catch them in the act. I love that it's not even, he catches them fucking or making out. It's just, hey, I noticed that your hieroglyphics on the shoulder have been smudged. Whore! So they decide that they're going to kill him before he can call them out, and then they're almost immediately caught by his guards. So Anck-su-namun says, hey, why don't you go away? Because you can resurrect me, and I'm just going to kill myself.
This is a long-ass prologue, by the way. We've got like a 7-minute prologue here.
It does, yeah, because I'm only at the halfway point of it.
But again, I love the vibe of this. Like, this has, like, epic written all over it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is star-crossed lovers. Like, I like that we're immediately made to invest in Imhotep and Anck-su-namun's relationship so that we can... I don't know, like, he's definitely a villain. He's doing terrible things throughout this entire film, but also you understand he's doing it for love.
Okay, keep going, because I want to talk about this curse and why anyone would ever put it on anybody.
Oh, it makes no fucking sense. It's like, yeah, the person we hate the most, who we want to, like, feel horrible things for all of eternity. Also, if he's ever reawakened, he'll be the most powerful, unstoppable killing force.
I wrote why in my notes so many times. I don't care, but, like, I wrote it.
Makes no sense. No. Okay, so Imhotep ends up stealing Anck-su-namun's body. We travel to Hamunaptra, the city of the dead. But before he can perform the ritual, he is stopped by the pharaoh's bodyguards, who are known as the Magi. So they give him the Hom-Dai treatment, in which he is mummified alive, but he still has like all of his brains and organs and stuff. And that's because we want to feed him to scarabs, lock him in a sarcophagus, and just, let him rot, keep him juicy.
Oh, God.
There are a couple of things here, because like we'll find out later, Rachel Weisz says like, oh yeah, the scarabs eat you very slowly. And it's like, okay, but we see them just people... like strip a guy of skin like in 2 seconds. But yeah,
those are the fast ones. These are the slow ones.
So the Hom-Dai, the worst of all ancient curses, one so horrible it had never been bestowed, and it's going to give this guy power over the sands and the glory of invincibility. So I don't understand why we're doing this.
Sounds great. All I got to do is get some dumbass to read a book, and I'm like immortal. Cool.
I think that this is the most camp thing.
Yeah.
In cinema history. It's like, I'm going to send this person to hell for like eternal damnation, but he might come back as a real bitch.
Right.
Like, it's fantastic.
He'll be fabulous.
It's such nonsense. It's amazing. I can imagine like the person writing that was just like, guys, guess what I've just thought of?
I mean, that's Stephen Sommers.
Like, oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah. And he's also going to come back in a loincloth with like a sheer kind of back to it.
Amazing.
Honestly, we didn't even really mention the fact that Patricia Velasquez is completely nude in body paint in this opening scene. But even me, as a 10-year-old gay boy, it was kind of a sexual awakening for me.
That's what this movie is. This movie turns people queer in like the way that conservatives are actually scared of, because you're just like, wait, I'm attracted to everybody.
Yeah. Everyone is so hypersexualized in this film. Especially like that intro thing. It's just like 1, 2, 3 sans people fucking.
Yes.
You're like, wow. Oh my God. It's absolutely insane.
Just hot people everywhere you look.
Hot people absolutely everywhere. Just like actually fucking, and then killing so that they can fuck, and then they fuck themselves, and then they're trying to bring themselves back from the dead so they can fuck again. It's completely amazing.
I mean, I love, obviously, this is based on, the old Universal movie, but also serials and B movies from the 40s and so on. So, like, it has that flavor to it. But I do love the sort of queer aesthetic of this immortal mummy coming back and being like, I'm just going to chomp down on, like, 4 of these guys so that I can bring back my lady friend.
Yeah, and, like, the hot guys as well, not, like, the gross ones.
Yes. Okay, So we're going to jump ahead to 1923. We're introduced to Ardeth Bey, who is played by Oded Fair, and he is watching over a battle that's happening in Hamunaptra, where Rick O'Connell, our protagonist and hero of the film, played by the one and only Brendan Fraser, with highly kissable lips throughout this entire movie.
Fun fact, they apparently went to Tom Cruise, if not first, then close to first, and he turned this down.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In some ways, I think we would have gotten a sort of similar film because both highly charismatic, but the physicality that Brendan Fraser brings to the role, very helpful.
Yeah, I think it's, because he'd obviously done films before this, but he's giving off George of the Jungle more than any of his other roles in this movie.
He is giving, it's like George of the Jungle in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, and even when he's in the jail cell and Evie goes to visit him, I was just like, oh, did they repurpose the same wig?
But he is oozing sex in this movie. Like,
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay, so yes, we're also introduced to his sidekick / second in command, Benny, who is played by Stephen Sommers regular Kevin J. O'Connor. I know that this is a divisive character in this film. I find him, just like in Deep Rising, so fucking funny.
Wait, do you find it divisive because what, people think he's annoying?
Oh, there's a ton of people who absolutely hate this character.
But I love to hate this character. Like,
sure.
That's so I didn't know that. Yeah, I think he's meant to be a reprehensible snake of a villain, and
he's so annoying, get him off the screen.
Which is funny though, because I feel like I haven't seen him in this type of. He does play the sidekick role often, but not like this.
Not as Weasley, for sure.
That's a good word. Thank you.
This is potentially one of the more racist castings.
I never understood because, at one point when, very late in the film, he says something in Turkish, but also when he first meets Imhotep, he clearly speaks a variety of different languages. So I felt like he is all races. He's obviously a white American,
right?
But I didn't get the intention that he's meant to be a coded Egyptian or Turkish or something like that.
But he's definitely a white man.
Yeah, it's a little unclear.
It is
in the film because of the way that he's visibly presented. You know?
Yeah.
It's it's a touch problematic, but I mean, if you've moved there and you've assimilated, then I guess that makes sense. But it's just, again, one of those things where you're like, okay, it's a character role, I get it, but
I think
not entirely sure.
It's a thing where, honestly, up until I was older, I didn't realize this was a white actor in this role, even though he's clearly.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And totally, absolutely get that. But I'm giving it leeway, if only because the film doesn't
pay attention to race.
Well, I get it. That's still problematic, but I'm giving the film the benefit of the doubt.
yeah. I mean, even Rachel Weisz is claimed a different accent. So I mean, God, it's just free for all. Just pick a card, pick an accent and ethnicity from a card. Well, why not go for it? Just make us believe it.
I didn't know Jonathan Hyde was Australian, but he moved to Britain when he was 21 and lost his Australian accent.
Yeah, it's a bit of a melting pot, but also anybody who watches this film and says, ooh, definitely racist, definitely problematic with the whitewashing, you are correct.
You are correct. Yes, but again, as to your point, pretty much everything in the 90s was.
Yeah.
And, that's just a fact that we've all acknowledged. And so, yeah, I mean, there's no real point to bring it up again. I just re-looked at his image on Google Images and I was taken aback somewhat.
No, but by all means, bring it up.
Yeah. But, moving on.
Okay, so we get this big battle, and it seems like Rick might even die here, but he ends up being left alone to wander the desert, and the Magi say, don't worry about him, he'll probably die out there. So, totally cool.
Question, though, Benny holes himself up seemingly in these tunnels, and I guess doesn't go explore them?
Guess not. I default assume that he, ran away with everybody else who is part of this French Foreign Legion.
Sure.
Okay, so we get this movie enjoys a good wipe. So we do a wipe to transition to 3 years later. We are at the Museum of Antiquities in Cairo. This is where we're introduced to Evie Carnahan, who is played by Rachel Weisz. And her introduction is classic screwball comedy where she's got this calamity within the stacks of the library.
This is a fantastic character introduction. It's so fucking funny. By the way, they did all of this in one take.
Oh my
Wow.
God. Wow. Because how long would it take to reset this?
Yeah.
Well, because you remember though, so she's on the ladder and she, falls into the bookcase and we do a 360 spin, but Rachel Weisz has to get off that ladder, move into her mark before the camera completes its turn to show her on the ground.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is a shot, I think, really well. Like it emphasizing both the comedy and the action at the same time.
I feel like almost the way that this shot panned out probably determined what her character would be like and performed like for the rest of the movie. Because if she was too camp in one bit, they're like, that was the one shot. That's how your character has to act.
She's got to be this way for the rest of the movie.
I actually wanted to ask, because a big complaint I have about movies in general is when we have this kind of like really good female character, but she's relegated to the damsel for especially the entire third act. That is kind of what happens to Evie here, but I feel like she has enough agency to where I don't find this as egregious of an example of that.
Agreed.
I would also agree. I think if only, even though, like particularly in that last act, it's her on the slab, her being chased by a Nuxuna moon, she still has that agency where she's yelling at Jonathan, who is a far more pathetic character in terms of like, he's silly, but also kind of useless. So I like that Evie gets to boss him around because it makes her seem more powerful.
Fun fact, they were going to have a moment where she actually gets like a hit in on a Nuxuna moon, but then they removed it because they thought that it would destroy some of the tension and the danger of that scene.
Interesting. Which is exactly what they do with her character in the second film, right? Like she's fully female Rick O'Connell.
Well, yeah, she's oh my god, she's Sarah Connor.
Oh, or I was going to say Laura Croft, but yeah.
Insert buff tough woman here.
There we go.
Oh, I have to correct myself. Sorry.
Yeah.
Rachel Weisz is actually English. I thought she was Scottish. I made a complete mistake. She's English.
Oh, but wait, no, someone else is... Oh, John Hannah is Scottish.
Yeah, I was just double checking.
Yeah.
God, I got that completely wrong. I was thinking of in The Lobster, and I thought maybe she was Scottish in The Lobster.
It's okay.
Maybe she's not. Oh my God, so in which case, I always thought that, like, watching it, I always thought that she was just doing a dreadful English accent.
Oh, no.
She's actually English. Wow.
I'm so happy that we were here to be present for this revelation.
Wow. Maybe she's just really posh then.
Do not besmirch her. We love a Rachel Weisz.
Oh no, I love her. She's one of my absolute favorites, to be honest. It's just so funny because the accent is so different from... I mean, that's what happens when you act, I suppose, is the voice changes. But it's just so odd to have like such a different, like, native-esque accent to what you have,
right?
But it's not, it seems so different. Anyway, that was my little revelation. I feel like
I mean, useful in a film that is filled with a variety of accents, many of them fake sounding.
I guess that was the point, right? So it was like everything had to be sort of overblown, so it didn't feel too... It felt so on the nose that it couldn't really be on the nose. It's like beyond the nose.
It's off the nose. It's off the face.
Yeah. It's a nose job.
Okay, so after she destroys the library, she gets into trouble with her boss, Dr. Terrence Bay, who was played by Eric Avari. And then we are introduced to her drunk brother, who is a bit of a ne'er-do-well, John Hannah. And he gives her an Egyptian version of a Hellraiser puzzle box because you got to solve this fucking thing to open it up.
We hear a lot, too, about Evie's Bimbridge scholars who have rejected her application time and time again for, well, she says not having enough experience in the field, but I read it as, you're a woman.
Yeah.
Definitely that, yeah. So an interesting thing is that we do find a map when we solve this Hellraiser puzzle box, and the Egyptologist immediately accidentally burns off the part with Hamunaptra, which, of course... will make sense later on when we discover he is either a member of the Magi or he's working with them to keep the city's secret safe.
Joe, you're going to think I'm so stupid. I thought this actor was F. Murray Abraham for like 20 years of my life.
Yeah. I mean, you're not completely wrong.
I'm just kidding. Like anyway, I thought they were the same person.
Okay. So, because we have burned the map and Evie is obsessed with this idea of finding Hamunaptra, we track down the person from whom we stole this artifact. So this leads us back to Rick O'Connell, aka George of the Jungle with his hair, and he is in prison stealing kisses and demanding escape.
So is he in prison for going to a whorehouse?
I didn't really understand what he was in prison for.
He was just looking for a good time.
Yeah, I also was not entirely sure why he was in prison.
I thought he was there because he had abandoned his post in the French Foreign Legion. Because he was found wandering in the desert.
But that was 3 years ago.
How long has he been in jail for?
I guess I assume if Jonathan stole it off of him, that he'd just gotten to jail.
See, that would make sense.
Yeah.
It's a who cares plot thing. Yeah. We just need him to be in prison.
Yeah. Hilariously, it's integral and irrelevant.
Exactly that.
Yes.
Yeah. So Evie goes to the warden, who, as we mentioned, is Gad Hassan, played by Omid Jalili. And she's basically bartering for Rick's life while he is going to the gallows. And Trace, do you have the horrific fun fact with this scene?
Yes. Everyone, Brendan Fraser almost died doing this scene. He did pass out. The air was cut off because, I mean, it was on the second take. The first take was fine, and then they wanted to do it again, and he passed out. And next thing we knew, Brendan Fraser is waking up, and there's an EMT resuscitating him on the ground.
Wow, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary, but...
That's terrifying.
Apparently he was fine, so we can just say it's a hilarious anecdote now.
I will say that one thing I do like about this scene, though, because again, like, you know, Evie can at first be... she's like, oh, she's just like a silly woman, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't really have a lot of agency, but I love that she uses men's outlook on women to her advantage, you know, like even when Hassan is like, you lie, and she's like, oh, I would never, me, a woman.
Yes, she's very proper in all the right ways, but she's not afraid to be cunning about it.
Yeah.
So we wipe to the Giza port as we are ready to board a ship. This is when Evie starts to notice, ooh, Rick cleans up really well. And this is, you know, a woman objectifying a man, and then he will reciprocate a little bit later. So everybody boards the steamer. This is when we're introduced to the other half of the main players in the film. This is the American treasure hunters. So these include Burns, who is played by queer actor Tuck Watkins. Trace or Rod, do you know who his husband is?
Yes, I do know who his husband is. His name has absolutely lost my brain. But yes, I am very aware of who his husband is.
Andrew Rannells.
Yes, that's it.
From the Book of Mormon and a bunch of other things. And of course, if Tuck Watkins looks familiar, you may recognize him as half of the gay couple from Desperate Housewives Season 2.
He's actually like 40 episodes of that show, so he's in more than just Season 2.
I mean, that's when I stopped watching because the second season of that show was fucking awful.
Wait, you didn't finish Desperate Housewives?
Definitely didn't. I went back for the one where they did the time jump, and I was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm out.
Oh, I mean, yeah, Season 2 is not a good season of television, but there are plenty of good things to come in the remaining 6 seasons.
Oh, sure. I have no doubt. I enjoyed the show for what it was. I just didn't feel the need to come back after it burned me for 24 episodes.
That hurts my heart. Because I get it, you know, but it's just like back then, just think about how you stopped back then. Hurts my heart.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Burns. We also have Henderson, who is played by Stephen Dunham. We have Daniels, who is played by Corey Johnson. And finally, making up the other Egyptologist in this film is Dr. Alan Chamberlain, who is played by Jonathan Hyde.
Yeah, he doesn't get enough to do in this movie, but he is playing the same character he plays in all the other movies he was in the 90s.
Yep. Truly. Did you need someone to sound British and look smart?
Yeah.
This was your guy. Okay, so we are on this barge and we need a little bit more backstory. We need Evie and Rick to spend some time together so the sparks can continue to fly. So she starts telling him about the gold book of Amun-Ra, which is what she's hoping to find in Hamunaptra. And he then discovers, the Americans are being led by a very familiar guide in Benny. So we throw him overboard.
I think I'll kill you.
I don't understand how people don't get joy out of all of the interactions that characters have with Benny because he is so hissable and he always gets his comeuppance.
Every time. Like, he is a pathetic figure.
It's just so funny to me. Anyway. So Evie is in her room. She's reflecting on the kiss that Rick planted on her in prison. She can't let it go. She keeps thinking about it. We get a proper horror mirror scare from this Magi who is about to attack her.
Oh, but I like that it's not, though, like the opening and closing of the mirror. It's, the camera goes down with her when she bends to pick up the brush she dropped.
Right. Yes. So his arrival prompts a big flaming shootout. Everybody gets involved. Jonathan manages to grab the key before it goes up in flames, and then we're all jumping overboard.
Which Rachel Weisz is wearing a white nightgown that I have to believe is completely see-through when she gets out of that water.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I did want, there's a couple of points where we can make comparisons to either films that took inspiration from this or that this film is drawing inspiration from. So we end up on opposite sides of the river, to me, is such a direct callback to Romancing the Stone, which has a identical idea about sexual chemistry as we're going on this action adventure.
I literally just typed onto my notes to talk about later Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile.
That's amazing because we fully do a whole you're on the wrong side of the river. I'll meet you over here. It's identical.
It's so interesting because you say that and it immediately clicks into place. And so it's interesting that people describe this as an Indiana Jones type movie when it's very much
not. It's really like Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas, the whole vibe of it. It's somewhere between a rom-com and an odd sci-fi thriller. Yeah. But it's so in the rom-com world that it's it's dumber and smarter than you think it is.
Yeah, no, it's 100% a screwball comedy to me.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't gotten a ton of movies like this, like Romancing the Stone. I mean, we got the Sandra Bullock one, The Lost City. But I didn't think she had the chemistry with Channing Tatum that really makes a movie like this sing. Because Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser do have that chemistry that Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, folks, if you have not seen Romancing the Stone, all-timer. Just such a good movie.
Amazing.
I like Jewel of the Nile, too. I think it's fine.
I do too.
I love both of them. I think they're both iconic.
Yeah.
I'm such a sucker for I wrote a book and now I have to live the book and I'm secretly pretty good at it.
Now, Rod, you ready to feel old? Because I can guarantee you that anyone that has not seen The Mummy on our listener base has definitely not seen Romancing the Stone.
No, absolutely not.
I'm less shocked by that fact.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Okay, so after we climb out of this river, yes, Evie would have just been in her nightgown, so we have to give her a full desert-appropriate makeover. She, like Rachel Weisz, looks so fucking hot in this outfit, and I'm not gonna lie, the top is still a little bit sheer and kind of bosomy, so I'm just I can definitely understand why anyone of any gender or sexual orientation would look at this and say, hot!
Yeah, I don't think she's wearing a bra with that outfit.
I don't think so.
I think the outfit is the bra, actually.
There we go. It's a built-in cup.
Yeah.
It's like a sports bra, Not at all. I'm kidding. Okay. So we head out on camels and we recognize that they're all being observed by Ardeth. So he is still in the mix. He's keeping an eye on these travelers and he's impressed that Rick has managed to survive. So our next big fun moment is where everybody meets up at dawn, either on our camels or our horses, and we're going to race to Hamunaptra as the sun rises and illuminates the way.
Also, sexism coming out here. We got Jonathan Hyde going, they're led by a woman. What does a woman know?
Yeah. Yeah, and you can definitely feel some of the tension in the interactions between his character, Dr. Chamberlain, and Evie, because ultimately she does steal the book and she does resurrect the mummy, but he's also just as stupid because he reads the curse and he also opens that.
Okay, they read the curse and say, yeah, that's fine.
Even Benny knows enough to leave the room.
Yeah.
But Benny's a survivor, So we end up getting into the city. We set up camp. This is when we go to the dig sites underground. We have a little bit of a face-off, but Evie realizes, ooh, I think there's a secret place underneath. So she plays mediator. We all back off. So we head downstairs, and Jonathan is predictably not focused. He's practicing his golf swing, and this is when we unearth the sarcophagus of Imhotep.
But we can't get there. We can't open it right now because our poor warden has wandered off on his own.
Yes, so we get a couple of really dandy, horrific sequences. So as the warden gets involved in some Scarab body horror, which goes into his skin, this is the part where I wish the special effects looked just a little bit better, because I think this could be really scary and upsetting.
I will tell you, and Rod, I'm interested to see what you think of this. Like, 10-year-old me was horrified by this scary. I don't care that it doesn't look good. Like the sound effects, the crunch when it enters his brain.
Yeah, I'm gonna challenge you that it doesn't look good. I've always found this very disturbing.
Okay.
All the bugs, all the scarabs throughout the entire film, I find like horrific.
I do think part of it is that sound design that Trace is talking about, the chittering of it. Yes. But also even the script is smart enough to continually have characters say, ooh, insects, I hate insects.
I think it's horrifying to me. I mean, it kind of is anyway. And it is, a little bit CGI, but I think they did it extremely well. Like that scene that you're talking about right now is so imprinted in my brain.
I 100% agree. I mean, again, like this is one of those things where it's like, I mean, it's not gory, it's not bloody, and they knew they wanted PG-13 when they were going into this. Like one thing I learned from the effects documentary was like, hey, when we were making the mummy, we could not make him like blood and viscera. It had to be like dry and rot. And so
it's not Hollow Man.
Yes. And so same thing with this thing where it's like, okay, yeah, like the idea of what's happened to this man is absolutely horrifying, but there's no blood. There's no violence in this scene. So, I mean, there's violence, but it's not the R-rated type of violence.
Yeah. It's like, how can you object to it, MPAA? Haha.
What's even scarier is that this doesn't kill him.
No, he actually dies by suicide.
Yeah. Awful.
But it's ironic because at the same time, we're seeing what's happening with the Americans camp, where they decide, okay, there's probably some kind of booby trap put on our sarcophagus or our dig site. So they call in the diggers, who get melted by pressurized salt acid.
I did listen to the commentary with Stephen Sommers. There's 3 commentaries in this movie, by the way. One has Stephen Sommers and his editor. One has just Brendan Fraser. Then the other one has Arnold Vosloo and like John Hannah and Oded Fair.
Oh, okay. That sounds like a fun group.
I don't know why they didn't put Brendan Fraser in the commentary, but anyway, Stephen Sommers has nothing nice to say about any of the extras in this film. He says almost all of them were horrible, and that includes these guys who get melted by salt acid. As they're dying, he's like, "Ugh, they were the worst."
Oh, God. I wonder if it was a culture/language clash.
I don't know, but like there's a part in the when all of Cairo become Imhotep slaves, and he points out a spot where you can see one of the slaves with boils on him, and his eyes are whited out, and he goes, "Yeah, because this guy wouldn't stop looking at the camera, so we had to CGI white over his eyes."
Oh my God, I've always wondered about that, because he's the only person with white eyes.
The only person with white eyes.
So funny. Okay, so both camps have taken a hit. Yes, we've lost the warden, we've lost the diggers, so everybody kind of reconvenes up top. This is when the Magi attack the camp that night, and we reach a bit of a détente, but we're told that you gotta pack up, you gotta be out of here in one day. It's just not safe for you to be here.
So rather than like continue their work, they're like, okay, we're gonna call it a night. I don't know about y'all. I would have opened up that sarcophagus immediately.
Probably, yeah. I guess the danger is you don't maybe want to do it at night because it'd be so fucking creepy, or because, hey, people just died. Maybe let's take a breather.
But it's also not like, well, I'll just have a nice sleep then.
Right.
Like, wow, that was horrendous. Let's just have a nice rest.
Right. Or let's make fuck eyes at each other over a bottle of booze.
Hell yeah.
Well, that I can understand.
Well, yes, because this is when we get drunk Evie trying to flirt with Rick, so he teaches her how to punch. She falls into his arms. It seems like they're going to kiss, and we're going the traditional, she's either going to fall asleep, like in Heartbreakers, or she's going to vomit, like every other movie.
This is the scene that I have extreme issue with in the film.
Wait, why?
I just think it's really fucking shit.
Like, as in it's not... Like, it's just a bad scene?
It's just a terrible scene. I feel like the rest of it is, like, amusing, smart farce. And I feel like this is just cliche.
Oh. Okay.
I don't know if that's harsh, and I'm sorry if you really like the scene, but I absolutely detest the scene. I wish it was not in the film.
I do really like this scene. I especially love her profound, her statement of, I am a librarian, but...
I do like that.
But...
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate...
Oh, no!
Oh, yeah, no, this is comedy that is all working for me. But I will say, Rod, that Stephen Sommers maybe kind of sort of agree. I mean, he thinks it works out, but he says, like, he was really nervous about this scene because he thinks there's an easy way for this to not be funny and to be too silly and maybe also be a little bit creepy because it's a drunk woman.
Yeah, I feel like it's just... Oh, for me, it's just so... It misses every mark that I want. Like, I hate drunk acting. And it's like, it's so cheesy. The script is so cheesy. I fucking hate this scene so much. Oh my God, I could catch fire.
I'm going to tell you, that this would not have been my guess for you as your most hated scene.
I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it so much. I could die.
I like it all the way up until the point where she falls asleep. Then I was like, that's, to me, very, very extremely cliche.
5 stars, no notes. I like it all.
Okay.
God, I'd forgotten about this scene. I'd pushed this into the back of my brain. I absolutely hate this scene. Sorry to anybody watching that finds the scene very, very funny. I just truly don't.
That's okay. We can all have different senses of humor.
If you find it funny, I'm really, really pleased for you. I just really dislike this.
I personally cannot agree, but I am happy for you.
Listen,
even though
everything is subjective. I feel like it's just... So there's a tradition in the UK called pantomime, right? Which is like a type of like slap and tickle theatre, which they do every Christmas, and they do like fairy tales and everything's like, oh, look behind you, and like, oh, I'm getting drunk, blah, 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 blah. And for me, this is like a pantomime performance, which really takes me out of a film. This feels like a cheap stage show, and it feels like amateur actors doing it. Even like the entire cast are amazing. Rachel Weisz is like a brilliant actor. There is not a single film that I would like fault her in. Brendan Fraser is amazing. John Hannah is pretty good. He's camp as shit in this.
Oh,
but like,
so camp.
They're all great performers, and this scene makes me feel like none of them can act.
Wow. That's I guess for me, I mean, I've never thought about this in a bad light, truth be told, but I guess it's also because it's so rare for me to see Rachel Weisz do something like this because she doesn't do things like this very often. So I find novelty in it.
It feels, I've said my piece.
Okay, well, we'll move on.
Sorry, I'm really sorry.
You have to apologize. Joe and I disagree a lot.
Yeah,
truly.
I've also had like a very triggering day, and I feel like the mention of this very scene has like sent me like beyond my capability of like being a human being.
Okay, well, Joe, move past the scene. We'll get to something good.
We're moving on.
Sorry, I hate it.
So in the morning, our crew opens up the skeleton.
Thank God we've gone past it. Thank God I feel okay again.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Come back. You're totally fine. So yes, we open up the sarcophagus. We discover the juicy skeleton of Imhotep, and this is happening concurrently as Dr. Chamberlain is reading the curse from Anuxinamun's chest.
Okay, let me just read this fucking curse that they say. Yeah, that's fine. Let's open it. So first, death will come on swift wings to whomsoever opens this chest. Okay, not a good start, but maybe it's just hocus pocus.
Sure.
There is one, the undead, who, if brought back to life, is bound by sacred law to consummate this curse.
Specific language. Sounds a little sexy.
Consummate? Yeah. He will kill all who open this chest and assimilate their organs and fluids. And in so doing, he will regenerate and no longer be the undead, but a plague upon this earth.
Sure.
Don't open this box. I will say, I never knew that it was Anck-su-namun's organs in the canopic jars.
I think they do say it, but they kind of glaze over it.
Well, because one of them's broken, so I'm like, well, what's in that one?
Would she have come back and she's just like missing a liver? Like, oh, I guess I can't drink anymore because, that one jar.
It sort of does exactly what it says on the tin with that curse, doesn't it? It's like...
Yep. We laid it all out for you, and you motherfucker still read from the book, still opened up this chest.
You imagine being like, he will come back and kill everyone. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. You know what? It sounds fake.
Oh, he
I'm
might
not gonna
not.
trust that.
He might not.
We might be able to plead with him. Maybe we'll try shooting him 1,000,000 times, even though it never works.
Well,
It'll be like, there is like one dark thing. Lol,
Okay, so that night, Evie does in fact steal the book, and she, I do love her line, no harm ever came from reading a book. And I was just like, everyone who has ever watched Buffy just groaned at that line because we know that that is not true. Also, everyone who's ever watched Evil Dead knows that that's not fucking true, bitch.
Okay, it's 1927.
Wow. For the audience members, this is basically the Necronomicon. So she does read from the book. The mummy does reawaken, and shit goes down real fast, real hard, because we start off these 10 plagues. So we begin with locusts that drive everybody inside, and this is when Burns, who is the first person who will go, he falls and his glasses are broken, and Trace, we've already mentioned Scooby-Doo on this episode.
I know! He felt this!
He literally is like, my glasses! I can't find my glasses! I was just like, are you kidding me with this right now?
See, I can cope with this much more than that dreadful drunk scene because I feel like this is supposed to be stupid.
Oh, no, I think it's very silly. It was more just like, is this movie actively referencing Scooby-Doo? Because it just seems so obvious in hindsight.
I mean, with the hair as well, it's a little bit like...
But do y'all find this scene particularly scary? Because I do think the glasses stuff is kind of silly and funny, but I also think the way that Sommers shoots this, with we're getting his POV, so it's blurred vision, but we can see kind of like the shape of something. But then we don't even get the reveal. We just have this extreme close up on Tuck Watkins' face. But I love that we can see his eyebrows shift when he realizes there's something. I find this very, very scary.
It's great. It's really well done because it is a perfect balance between stupid and actually quite tense. I like the way that it takes you out of the horror and the thriller element by making it silly.
Yeah.
And then it reminds you that it's a thriller. And it's funny, like it's the whole film for me, the nice thing about it is it's genre shifting.
Yeah.
And this like one sequence is the perfect example of what it's trying to poke fun at and draw from and do. I think it's great.
We kind of glossed over it, but I do love the slow zoom in shot on the mummy right when it animates. We're getting Rachel Weisz's like voiceover of the spell. Again, Goldsmith's score doing a lot more like I don't know what he's using here, but like it's that kind of just like a creepy sound, because I don't think there's a lot of like really like horror scorey stuff here. It's a lot of more like adventure-y score, but like in this moment particularly, it's really scary. Like
a choral or something, right?
Yeah, that's it.
No, it's very fun. And as we said, the special effects sometimes take on an air of cartooniness, particularly with the mummy. So I like this, comes out of the sarcophagus. It's almost a 3D effect where it's roaring at us, and it's good times.
Yeah.
So I don't mind this first part with Burns, but the part where, so Evie and everybody has to run from these scarabs because they're like descending on them in mass. And then she falls through a trap door and she ends up being basically pinned against a wall by the mummy. But we've got Burns in the background who is trying to crawl away. And when she says, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. And he's like, he took my tongue.
Oh.
He took my... I'm just like, if I was young, this would freak me the fuck out.
Oh, it did.
The tongue, is so disgusting.
Well, and also, this is something they talk about in the effects, too, because they had to make him be eyeless and tongueless without gore. And I think the shot's actually pretty good, because you can see into his eyes. Or, I'm sorry, his lack of eyes.
Yeah, the tongue is less clear until he says it, because you don't really understand why he isn't responding to her, but the eyes are fucking nightmare fuel.
Yeah. But I agree. Her pleading for help with him just responding that way, it's, I mean, again, like, 10-year-old Trace, this was a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So she is rescued by Rick, who bursts in. We shoot this mummy. There's high comedy in the way that this mummy just gets like shot and sort of falls off to the side of the screen, but also in the way that Rick continuously insists on yelling at it. Brendan Fraser, we've mentioned he's really good. He's very charismatic. He's incredibly hot. He just owns the screen so much when he is on, but also like his ability to convincingly do action, but then also get those comedy beats in. So good.
Yeah.
So the survivors flee to the surface where the Magi are waiting, and they're kind of pissed off because they're just like, hey, we warned you about this, and then you fucking did it anyway. So now we're really, really mad at you.
But they're not going to kill them. They're just like, all right, well, we don't have a reason to kill you because you've already done what you weren't supposed to do. So be on your way.
Well, at this point, there's kind of no reason, right? I mean, they've got a bigger villain that they need to go and take care of.
Okay, are you going to talk about Benny next?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is when Benny then gets his introduction to Imhotep, and we break out all different manner of religious artifact to try to make sure we don't die, and instead we just become enslaved to this guy.
Okay, I want to ask y'all something. So there's a joke here, right? Because he starts speaking in English, he has a crucifix, then he's doing Arabic, and I have my subtitles on, so it says, speaking this, speaking Arabic. And then when he pulls out the which is a joke, the subtitles just say speaking gibberish. And I don't know if this is actual, like, I assumed it was like Chinese or something.
I thought it was Chinese, yeah.
But I actually always thought this was one of the funniest jokes in the movie, but now watching it today, I'm kind of like,
it's cringe.
Yeah.
Or was it sneakily saying that he was making up something to sound like he was saying another language?
You know what?
Yeah.
I would believe that if he wasn't holding up another necklace to go in, but, I don't know what that necklace is, so what am I even saying?
Right. Right. Interesting. I'd forgotten that detail.
I will say, though, it is Hebrew is the language that that Imhotep calls the language of the slaves.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. Huh. Okay.
So, we go from English to Arabic to gibberish to Hebrew.
Wild. What a wild choice. Wild. Not the wildest choice of the movie, but a wild choice.
No.
Yeah. It's in keeping with what we previously discussed.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, so Benny agrees he will help Imhotep collect the contents of the jar. So then we cut to Fort Bryson in the morning. This is when Rick is desperately trying to get Evie to pack because it's just not safe to be here anymore. She refuses. Comedy, comedy, comedy. And then Rick ends up having a conversation with a drunk pilot named Winston Havelock, who is played by Bernard Fox. And again, if you're looking for comparisons to something like Indiana Jones, this guy is giving off big Marcus Brody energy. So we're acclimatizing to Fort Bryson. We're thinking, okay, where's the movie going to go? Because it's a bit of a soft reset. We've escaped from Hamunaptra. We're back in the city, so we don't need to worry quite as much. We're protected at the fort. But no, because Benny has brought Imhotep to Burns. This is a really upsetting scene because Burns has no idea what is happening until he's introduced to the prince.
Benny's line, like, Prince Imhotep thanks you for your hospitality. And for your eyes, and for your tongue.
This scene was crazy to me. I was like, one, he's still alive, wild. And why go back to him again? Like, this is, I don't know, this scene is very uncomfortable to me.
It's so mean. It's like, oh, I guess you were interrupted the first time, but also you're putting on the charade when we know what he's capable of. I mean, this is Imhotep at his weakest, but still this idea that he's just going to sit there and take tea with this guy before just drinking him up.
Yeah, that's
and,
camp.
The reveal of his husked out corpse. Honestly, again, that's something. This is pre The Ring, and again, seeing these corpses with their jaws spread open like that. It is again, it's a horrifying scene. I actually want to ask you too as well because so this is a 2 hour and 5 minute movie about the pacing of this film because I was checking timestamps.
Oh, it flies by.
Well, we don't wake the mummy up until the hour mark of this movie, and I feel in any other film, people would be oh, it takes a little too long to get going, but I never feel that way about this movie.
Yeah, I don't feel like you notice the time because there is constant action.
Truly.
All the way through. Maybe even in Jurassic Park, and I think it was wrong until quite far into the movie.
Yeah, actually, you're right.
And the pacing is probably quite similar. I feel like they mirrored that kind of thing. Although you do see a dinosaur a lot earlier, but maybe you also see a pyramid a little bit earlier here. So I don't know. I don't think it feels too long at all. I think the pacing is kind of great.
Yeah,
in the film.
Right. I mean, this 2 hours, it does not feel like 2 hours and 5 minutes. I watched it again today with that commentary, and I was just whew, back in the movie.
Here we go. Time is flying, yeah. Okay, so because Burns has been consummated, this part of the curse has been consummated, we can start with a couple of new plagues. So we do get all of the wine and water turning to blood, as well as just a fuck ton of meteorites hitting the city.
I am a little... this has always bothered me, but that we don't do all 10 of the plagues. I mean, again, we can't do the firstborn son, whatever, but we only do 6 of these plagues.
Yeah, because we mentioned specifically that there are 10 plagues, and then if you try to count, you will not be able to hit that number.
Well, even the darkness, it's supposed to be 3 days of darkness, and when they go back to Hamunaptra, it's bright as day.
Yeah, it's an afternoon. Basically, the sun goes behind a cloud, and we call it an eclipse. So, Rick and Evie come in as the prince is regenerating. We get to see the effect of his body filling out. It's good stuff. And then this is where we discover that he is still vulnerable to cats. So it's the first of 2 times we will use this joke. Works both times.
Yeah, I guess, my God, I'm always kind of just but it doesn't really come to much because he gets to full power so fast. So we only get to use this cat thing twice.
An interesting semi-plot point.
I wonder if it's when you're writing a screenplay, if you're okay, how can I get them away? I'll just make this up really quick, and then it's easy to write off by saying, oh, but once he has full power, he won't be afraid of them anymore.
Right. I mean, you get to make up the rules, so everything goes.
Mm-hmm.
So we head to the library to try to get some answers. This is when we discover that Dr. Bay is in cahoots with Ardith Bay. That's too many bays, but spelled differently. And this is also when we learn that Evie has tragically been selected as the human sacrifice to bring Anck-su-namun back to life.
I do love the moral quandary out there, too, because Evie even questions them. It's you think this justifies the killing of innocent people? And they're just both yep.
To stop it? Absolutely. Yeah. So this is when the next plague comes in. This is our eclipse, however brief. So Rick and Jonathan go out looking for the Egyptologist because he is one of the few unaccounted members, and we know that he's going to be on the hit list. So we head to his office, which is being ransacked by Benny, and he is also looking for the Book of the Dead, which Imhotep will need.
Okay, so this Egyptologist death, the death is fine. We see the aftermath, of course, but I love the shot when he's running down the street and we have a close-up of his eye, and then he moves out of frame, and then Imhotep's eye takes his place.
Yeah.
I think that's really clever.
It's just very fun, right? So, with the Egyptologist down, we are halfway there. So 2 are down, 2 left to go. We should note that Imhotep actually looks like Arnold Vosloo now, so he's less CGI, more human, but he does still have parts of his face missing. And when he sees that Rick and Jonathan are looking at him, he unmouths a giant swarm of flies.
Fabulous.
But they just close the window and it's fine.
They just close the window and it's fine. But this is the kind of thing of ostentatious FX, but still, I remember being so impressed back in 99, just ooh, what else is this guy gonna pull out?
No.
So Henderson is the next one to go. He's the kind of hunky one. I'm always very sad when he disappears, but his death is actually my favorite of the 4 because we get to watch it play out in shadow on the wall.
Ooh, but I love love the lead into it though, because we have this great jump scare where he's just like, he points his gun out the window and we're waiting, and then all the sand rushes in and gets him.
It's so cool.
It's just so unfortunate. These guys don't stand a chance. And, you know, they're not really characters. We were introduced to them early enough so that we kind of care, but also they're not part of our group technically. But every time one of these guys goes down, I think, ugh, man, you did not stand a single chance.
It gives the second act of the film kind of a slashery feel to it, but I do like that they're all working together. Like, it's not like, it's not the Americans versus the Brits anymore, you know? Like, they are working together. But I agree with both of you, yeah. Like, there's like a stop motion quality to the way the silhouette looks when he gets drained. Yeah, it's really effective. I mean, he just throws him off to the side. Oh, yep. And that great moment where the Scarab beetle, like, crawls into his cheek hole and he eats it.
We're making good use of those sound effects of those crunchy scarabs.
Oh, I love it, love it.
So this is when we get our second cat bit where Imhotep tries to kiss Evie and then Rick uses the cat to get him out of the room.
Wasn't him using the sand to go through the keyhole? Isn't it giving you a little bit of Dracula mist?
Yes, I think so.
Because he is something of a lover, right? You know, he's a tortured, damned creature.
Well, actually, Rod, do you empathize with Imhotep in this movie?
Yeah, he's hot. I mean, I
share the same problem. It's very difficult.
I totally empathize with him. I mean, yeah, why not?
He got a raw deal. I guess it's one of those things where it's like he's only killing these people because the curse command. He's bound by sacred law to do this stuff. So it's one of those things where I'm like, he just wants to get his girlfriend and it's fine. But then it seems like he does kind of want to take over the world at the end of it.
Well, you know what? If I'd been like mummified alive, I'd be pissed too.
Yeah,
right.
That's true. That's true.
So,
has been hundreds of years.
Yeah, he's great. I think he's cool. Why not let him do it?
And I mean, he also looks like Arnold Vosloo in this outfit. And dear Lord.
It's just all hugely camp. And I'm here for it. I'm like, sure, like do all these crazy wild things. It's so wildly camp. I can't think of another word. The way he does everything, all the movements is really camp. And I'm like, fantastic, go for it. It's a bit like Ursula in the desert.
And that is, you know, because like, so I said they did the motion capture for him. So that they actually did all the animations and stuff, but then they went back and redid it with his motion capture. So when you just see like the previous scenes with the just CGI creature, it is mimicking Arnold Vosloo's actual movements, which is really cool.
Well, that's nice, yeah, because I saw there were some reviews at the time who said, oh, you know, even when he regenerates, Arnold Vosloo doesn't really get to do much. Like, the film doesn't allow him to perform to a certain extent. And, that kind of encourages me that, oh, he was present. He was embodying this character.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I think that, okay, obviously, the special effects are a huge draw in this movie, but I think it's a good balance between the characters. And again, not to bring up The Mummy Returns again, but I think The Mummy Returns is a movie where the special effects like overshadow any of the character work because there isn't a lot of character work in that movie, whereas this one is doing the character work.
Yeah, I think that this one, because it is like the first in, I presume they wanted to make a series.
Oh, yeah.
It's the establishing and it's the action. So they have to make the characters a little bit more presented, which is to our benefit, I think. Like, there is plot, there is character, and there's action, and there's CGI. So it's like a good balance.
Well, I guess it always feels like the CGI is complementing what's on screen, not the star of what's on screen.
Yes. Whereas, like, I contrast it with, like, the X-Men series, for example. I loved the X-Men growing up, and I suppose a lot of people going to watch The Mummy liked the idea of a mummy or Dracula, or the old Hammer horror kind of things.
Yeah.
But with the X-Men first movie, I was bored to tears because it was just excruciatingly introducing who all the characters were, and nothing really seemed to happen.
Yeah.
Whereas in this film, they introduce everybody, but at such a pace that you get enough information, but you just carry on with the movement and plot.
You know, that's actually, I've talked about this a lot with Joe, Rod, where it's like, I prefer Scream 2 to Scream 1 because we have all the introductions out of the way. We kind of like pick up, like, there's a new status quo, whatever. But generally speaking, I do like sequels a lot because I like that we have all the introductory stuff out of the way.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's weird in that, it doesn't work for me in these mummy movies where it's like, I think it's less interesting in that second movie. And I like getting to know them in this first movie.
Yeah, because it feels like it's done at like a kind of Romancing the Stone, like cheap romance novel speed, where you're kind of told facts or like information, but it's not too 3D. So maybe that like 2D or 1D element is actually quite beneficial in this movie, that you invest enough, but you're not like trying to find their backstory. You're like, okay, well, that's who they are. Let's go for it.
Right.
Yeah.
But also this movie is so, when you see people refer to it, they often say, oh, it's fun. It's actiony. Like I think it has that sort of light escapist fare that makes it go down easier. And I think we're also a bit more generous if the characters are a little bit more shallow, because we're inherently here for the action and the FX, as you said, Trace. But this film is sly with the way it's using its characters. And I think because the cast is so strong, like the performances are all really, really good, even if the characters themselves aren't particularly deep. I think that carries the film.
I mean, we haven't talked about John Hannah as Jonathan a lot, but even in this scene, Imhotep stands out after the cat, and we get this great punchline to this scary scene where Rick is like, "You all right?" to Evie, and then Jonathan just goes, "Well, I'm not sure."
Yes, queer icon for days.
God bless him. That character is crap. Like,
it's a terrible character.
It's so crap, but it's actually very fun. Like, in the way that I detest that drunk scene, I actually really enjoy John Hannah in it, There's no reason why I should enjoy John Hannah's performance and detest that drunk scene so much. But I think John Hannah is so... He knows how shit that character is, and he's just having so much fun with it that it's quite hard not to have fun with him.
Well, and I guess maybe that's why I can understand people maybe find Benny really annoying, because Benny and Jonathan are very similar character archetypes.
Yes. But I would argue that they're distinct enough, like both actors are doing a solid enough job that even when the jokes are the same, the two characters, like you're never going to confuse the two characters.
No, I feel like they're both fantastic actors as well, and they both really know how to do a caricature and an actual character, and they do the absolute most that they can with the script with their characters.
I'll say this is the first thing I ever saw John Hannah in, so I just always thought he was like a big comedian.
Wow.
So he's not at all. So whenever I watch, I mean, Joe, you're gonna know my reference, but whenever I started watching Spartacus, where he's like the main villain of the show, I was just like, oh, this is a different type of John Hannah than what I'm used to.
So you hadn't seen like Four Weddings and a Funeral at this point?
No, Four Weddings and a Funeral was a college watch for me.
Wow. Oh my God. Like that's the first thing I ever saw him in, and it was just... He's so amazing in that film. My God, he's so amazing.
It was an R-rated film, so I couldn't watch it.
For some reason, my parents let us watch that on VHS when I was there.
Well, but that's a proper British movie, isn't it?
But I think
it is, yes.
That might be a 12 rating, though, because I think the rating is only for language. So if you say fuck more than 3 times, it's an R rating over here.
Right. It does start with... 2 minutes of just saying fuck, fuckity, fuck, fuck, while in the car.
Exactly. So
I remember my parents wincing at that.
Oh no.
Amazing. Anyway, back to the Mummy.
Yes, okay. So back to the Mummy. We're down to one person. So we've got to get to the museum because we need to figure out a plan. And Evie is convinced that if we can find the Book of Amun-Ra, it might do the opposite effect of what the Book of the Dead does. So we might be able to kill Imhotep with it. So we need to go and do some research. Unfortunately, Imhotep has raised up his next plague, which is boils. So we've got this army of
boiled out people.
Yeah, more or less. I don't love the makeup effects on these people. Like, it's kind of inconsistent, but they look properly scary because there's so many of them.
It is inconsistent, but I just chalk that up to boils don't follow the same pattern on every person. They look wet, which I appreciate.
Yeah, so they're quite threatening. Jonathan goes to collect a car. I do love that he more or less does a zombie walk where he tries to fit in.
Okay,
right.
Yes, and I have to believe that Edgar Wright borrowed that when he did Shaun of the Dead, whenever they all pretend to be zombies.
Yes.
Well, do you think that this is also a gentle homage to Romero, who was so involved in the project for so many years?
It might be. But yeah, his Imhotep.
Like, again, it's such a dumb, basic joke, and yet... Like, Hannah is selling it so fucking hard that it just works.
I think what makes it funnier is that, like, okay, they're all running and charging and screaming, and then as soon as they get to him and he starts just slow chanting, they match his pace.
Yeah. You know what? They're a crowd of followers.
I love it. It's so good.
So we all pile into the car, and then we've basically got to drive through these people down narrow alleyways. So I find this particular sequence very exciting. We're driving over them, they're climbing into the car, and unfortunately, this is where Daniels, our last member of the American group, gets pulled out, and he gets chomped down.
I almost wish we had something like, because it's the last draining we get in the movie, I wish we had something that was a bit more iconic
Dramatic.
than this. Apparently this was a longer scene that they cut down. I don't know why they cut it down, but I mean, I can't imagine they would show much else outside of his corpse, but still.
I wonder if it was just pacing. It's like, okay, we need to ramp up. We need to get back to Hamunaptra.
Yeah, and we've already seen, what happens, so it's not like it's anything new.
Yeah. So, new for this is because Imhotep is now fully regenerated. He corners everybody with this mob of boiled people. And he says, okay, Evie, come with me and I will spare their lives. So she does. She sacrifices herself for the good of the group. And then Imhotep totally goes back on his promise. So, shocking, yes.
I'm not a huge fan of Mr. Curator Terrence Bass sacrificing himself because he did not need to do that.
No. Like, what time were you buying people?
Yeah.
A second?
Yeah. Like, jump down that sewer.
But he does. So Rick, Ardith, and Jonathan get away. Dr. Bay is now gone. So the three men drive to the desert, and this is where Winston comes back into the plot. Thank God we introduced him back at the fort. So they convince him to fly to Hamunaptra. And of course, the recurring joke is that he didn't die in battle along with all of his friends. So he's just been drinking his life away. And we say, hey, do you want to come on this suicide mission with us? And he says, absolutely.
Why not?
So we do get this sand twister. I love the comedy of checking in on Jonathan as well as Ardith as they're just strapped to the wings of this plane.
I actually think that the funny gag for me is with this sand tornado as we see Rachel Weisz and Kevin J. O'Connor just like thrown out of it.
Mm-hmm. It feels almost like a weird Wizard of Oz kind of reference, doesn't it? So yes, we have all arrived back at Hamunaptra. This is when Imhotep tries to kill the plane and everybody on it by swallowing it using the sandstorm. Really good special effect here.
Love this bit. I love this section so much.
Yeah, I think this is possibly the most iconic image from this movie outside of Anaxinamun, that body paint.
Yes, this was all over the trailers.
But I think it looks good. I think the face looks good. I love that when Arnold Vosloo like kind of smirks and then the sand face also smirks.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Good.
Yeah, Evie has to prostitute herself out with a kiss so that she can distract him. And I like the way that the face just kind of collapses, but it's a little too late. The plane still crashes and Winston does get his death wish. And then the plane just goes into quicksand immediately. It's a very odd sequence, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're back into Hamunaptra. We're here for the final act of the film. Imhotep is preparing to sacrifice Evie. We've got Rick, Ardith, and Jonathan searching for the Book of Amun-Ra. And Jonathan accidentally awakens a scarab. And we know how this is going to go, but of course the outcome is slightly different this time.
This is interesting because you see the effect, the CGI effect of the scarab going up his arm, but the next two shots before Rick cuts it out, it's definitely not there, but they're still acting like it's there, which I think is really interesting. I never knew if that was a mistake or not, if it was like, maybe it's just meant to be on the other side of his arm and we're not seeing it from that vantage point.
I didn't even realize.
Yeah. I see this movie a lot.
They might not have noticed, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I'm sure they were just given instructions, oh, it's going up your arm. Oh, act scared.
There were a lot of other shots with more pressing special effects, I imagine.
Sure. Yeah.
Potentially, yes.
So the importance of Rick shooting this scarab is that it does alert Imhotep that they have survived the plane crash. So he awakens his mummified priests to go and track them down. But first we have to find the room full of Egypt's wealth in gold.
Man, Benny had the right idea. I can't believe Jonathan didn't just grab this shit and move it out there.
100%. Just grab a couple things and put them in your pocket for later.
Because that never goes wrong, right?
Well, I mean,
admittedly. I would have assumed every item in there was absolutely cursed. Like, you touch it, your hand melts or something.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a really good point. I mean, given what's happened before, maybe not.
Mm-hmm. So the trio does make their way to Horus, the statue of Horus, to collect the Book of Amun-Ra. And I'm going to say it's a surprising choice for this film. But the hottest moment in this entire movie to me is when Rick takes a match and lights it using Ardith's face. Because it's just like...
That does it for you?
That's grisly. That is that is mask hotness right there. And then he does it to himself to light the other stick of dynamite so that we can get an escape.
And that really did it for you?
It's an unusual choice. Like, when do you ever see someone light a match on somebody else's face?
It is a choice. Like, it is. I mean, there is no logic why you would do that. So it's like, let's make queers quake.
Yeah. So Ardith is the next one to decide he needs to sacrifice himself. I remember being pissed at this in the theater the first time I saw it, where I just thought, he doesn't need to die. Like, we don't need to get rid of this character because he's really interesting. So I was very happy when it's revealed, oh no, he basically just left them to fend for themselves.
Actually, wait, when do we see him again?
Not until the end.
Okay, but we do see him at the very end.
Sure, he provides a jump scare before he, like, grabs a camel and abandons them.
Right.
He's just like, this isn't my mission. You folks have it under control. So, this is when Imhotep starts the ritual. So we get a kind of repeat of what we saw at the opening, and the spirit goes into Anck-su-namun, but she doesn't regenerate in the same way. We still have to kill Evie for her to, assume her Patricia Velasquez hotness. So we're also seeing Benny loading up a camel full of gold. Of course he would. And Rick jumps into action to save Evie before Imhotep can stab her and to complete the resurrection. And this is when we get the big mummy battle sequence. Ooh. I love the moment where he has to grab the mummy hand that is crawling towards the sword so that he can use it to chop off the legs, and then the body falls on top of it. It's good stuff.
Honestly, your drinking game for this movie, just for this whole fucking scene, is take a shot every time someone says, Ihibut Setna!
God, yes. Kill them! Kill them!
Ihibut Setna!
So Jonathan has the Book of Amun-Ra, but he can't open it because he needs the key, which is in Imhotep's loincloth. But he can command these warriors. Unfortunately, until he figures that out, they're just going after Rick. So it's chaos, it's pandemonium. Also, we've got the mummified body of Anck-su-namun going after Evie, who has managed to get up. So it's... yeah, a lot of things happening on
chaos.
Absolutely. And we're intercutting between all three of these things. But again, like, it's just getting your pulse racing. Like, this is so exciting, so thrilling.
But it's still comedy, right? Because Jonathan needs the help to read the final symbol. And he's like, oh, it's a bird. And Evie's like, I'm about to get stabbed. What does it look like?
Motherfuss! And he's like, oh, yes, I see.
Oh, yeah. So he manages to take control of these royal guards. He directs them to kill Anck-su-namun, which we again see in a kind of shadow play. And this does piss off Imhotep, but his lady love is technically dead at this point. My question to you two is, how did Jonathan grab the key from Imhotep's loincloth? Because me thinks that's a little bit queer.
No. Oh, okay. I thought you meant, like, literally, how did he do it? I was like, no, he was choking him out, and so he grabbed it.
Mm-hmm. But, like, look at what Arnold Vosloo is wearing in this. It's basically like transparent booty shorts. There was only one place to hide. It was either in the front or the back.
And how would he not notice that it was being stolen?
Right?
I mean, he was choking him out and he was having such a good time with it.
Maybe that part didn't regenerate.
Oh, he hasn't regenerated his dick?
Who knows?
Oh my God.
That'd be terrible.
I can't. I know you referenced Hollow earlier, but I can't believe, we don't get like a little like dry
just
rot.
Like a bulge.
Just like a little dry rot thing dangling between his legs in this early
maybe
stages.
He needed to like suck Brendan Fraser as well to regenerate the dick.
Right.
You know, that was like, he took the tongue off somebody, took the eyes off somebody. He's like, oh, well, this guy's hot. I'll take his dick.
There we go.
Yeah. Or he didn't regenerate his dick because he was like, I really wish that guy was in that room when they opened that box.
Yes.
Yeah.
So disappointing when the hot guy manages to escape before the curse is implemented.
It's so annoying.
Okay, so Evie manages to use the key to open up the Book of Amun-Ra, and she finds the inscription. And I do love the fact it is the same 2 lines repeated twice to get rid of immortality and the most dangerous foe the world has ever seen.
Kagishmal, Paradus, and the movie's done.
Mm-hmm. I will say I like that his immortality is stripped by a ghost chariot, and then he chases after it up the stairs, kind of a like, hey, no, soul, don't leave me.
I really liked that scene. I thought it was kind of cool.
I think it's so, really interesting. Yeah.
So weird.
Well, honestly, because I don't know how they did it exactly, but it feels more like an 80s effect than a 90s one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Rick is very surprised by this. He thought this was going to kill him, and then he stabs him. He impales him with his big sword, and the way it's shot, it kind of looks like, ooh, they're close. Are they just going to kiss? And Evie goes, oh, yeah, he's mortal, so he's dead.
She took forever to get to that answer, but yes.
But then it's interesting, Trace, how many times you said they were referencing Terminator, because when he stumbles into this pool of black, tarry-looking liquid, the last thing we see is his hand, and it is the exact same as Terminator 2's ending.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't give a thumbs up, but yes.
He might as well have.
His skull kind of like gives a wink, I feel like.
Like a little kiss.
Yeah.
A little John Voight eye wink from Anaconda.
Honestly, kind of. I do find like skeletons with like jaws that are off, that aren't where they should be. I find it very gross, and so that's what happens as he dissolves in this water. Like his jaw, you just see it shift off to the side.
Oh my god, I knew he was queer. He just unhinges his jaw.
He was just gooped.
He's slut.
Yeah, he's literally gooped.
He's literally like gooped.
Okay, so you might rightfully think that the movie is done, but not quite. We've got to destroy this entire fucking town.
What a waste.
Yeah, but I mean, this was in the prophecy, right? Like, we thought Hamunaptra had been buried in the sands of time before, so let's just do it all over again. But it means, the 17 weeks of production it took to build these tunnels, it's all got to come down. So,
because Benny just needed to rest.
Well, do you think that that's what it was? It was just as simple as, you sat in the wrong place and it activated the failsafe?
Yes, he moves a lever because he puts his bag of treasure on it.
Yeah.
Okay. See, so there we go. We should forgive Jonathan for not stealing something because all it took was sitting on a lever to bring this whole fucking place down.
Well, I don't think Jonathan would have put anything on a lever. I think he would have had that in his hands at all times.
Right. Okay.
But this to me is like the moment where it's like the homage to Jewel of the Nile or Indiana Jones, where it's like oops, I sat on something wrong and now we're all going to fucking die. And then they all have to like run. It's like, I think it's like a loving nod to the predictable tropes of those films, you know?
I agree. I think it's also like, you think the movie's over, you think the thrills are done, and we get one last little thrill before the credits roll.
Imagine if they just like walked out and they were like, wow, spiffing.
Right?
You know?
That was a crazy time.
Yeah, like I bet no one will ever go into those gold-laden tombs ever again.
Sure, yeah. I will push back on you, Trace, though. I don't think that this is a little thrill. Like, to me, this is tremendously exciting, but I am admittedly a sucker for things closing on people.
Yeah.
I quite like it when movies do this. The scene of Benny nearly getting out and then having to like go back and shuffle kind of spider walk. Oh, I'm always just like, move faster, move faster.
Actually, that's more like Temple of Doom, even, because doesn't
it is?
Okay, yes, okay. Which I know was Indiana Jones, but I agree with you. The ceilings coming down give me anxiety.
Ooh, yes.
Dreadful.
So Benny is unfortunately caught, and he's got a flare that goes at, well, it's a lit stick with fire.
A torch?
Yes, a torch. Thank you.
A lit stick.
A lit stick, he probably did it off of artist's back or something earlier. I don't know where he got
He's
this.
also wearing a material object on his head, a hat.
Mm-hmm. Let's just use too many words to describe everything moving forward.
It's fine. You're in smart mode. I get it.
This is true. Yeah.
He's moving forward using all of his limbs. He's running.
So sadly, Benny doesn't make it very far. His torch does go out at a very inconvenient time as the Scarabs encircle him, and we fade to black as we hear him screaming. It gets crunchy again.
This scene is so good. This scene is so good.
The crunch.
I remember that this one, like, a lot of the Scarab scenes I think are very memorable, but the one under the skin and then this one are so, they let your brain go into such dark places, you know? It's so good.
And that's why, too, again, people say how Benny's annoying, he's a horrible character, blah, 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 blah. You know, racism aside. This ending for him makes it all worth it for me. Like, this is such a good ending for this character.
A lot of characters in films are really annoying. He's annoying, but he's definitely needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
He's a foil.
Not like, he's a foil, and he's a huge plot point, and the performance, whilst cliched and stereotypical, it's a great performance. You know, it's not like there are lots of films with this type of character, and then they're done really badly.
Yeah.
But I feel like this character actor does a great job.
He commits.
And nails it.
I agree.
Yeah. Like, we've not really said a ton about Kevin J. O'Connor's performance other than the fact that he's very funny. But, like, you know, there's the moment where Rick beats him up in the Egyptologist's office, and then he throws himself out the window. And we see him land, like, in really close proximity to the camera, and you just see his eyes roll like he's a fucking cartoon.
I would say it feels like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, there's the moment where when he gets tossed out of the tornado, he goes, I need a new job.
Yeah.
Just like he's able to sell in an almost understated fashion all of these jokes in a different way than John Hannah's doing. And yeah, I mean, you're right, Rod. I think his role is really important to the purpose of the film, but it's not that grating like, oh, we just need a person who's going to do things to advance the plot. It feels more organic than that.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so Benny is dead. We have our 3 survivors. They have managed to escape Hamunaptra, but like the whole city is going down. We have to run. We've got to book it out of here. So this is when we end with Ardith giving them a jump scare as he pats John Hannah's character on the shoulder. And then he rides off because, hey, Imhotep has been dealt with. So we initially think, oh, this is unfortunate. They've got nothing to prove that they were ever in Hamunaptra. They've got no money, no proof of anything. And we get on the camel, and of course, we get a little cheeky wink so the light reflects off of the bag of jewels that Benny had left on the camel as we ride off into the sun.
That's the sequel I want. I want to know what Ardith Bey does with his life now that his life's purpose is done.
I mean, presumably he just tries to follow Rick around and fuck him.
Yes. I mean, Oded Fair has never not looked sexy, so yes.
Yes.
But yeah, that is The Mummy, everyone. Happy 25th anniversary. Gulp. Rod, as the guest of honor, final thoughts on this film.
Camp. Arnold Vosloo, high camp. Rachel Weisz, beyond camp. Brendan Fraser, straight camp. John Hannah, British camp. Patricia Velasquez, cunt camp. Oded Fair, serious camp. Tuck Watkins, actually camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have that written down? That's fantastic.
I did have that written down. I might have done some research. I wanted to have, like, you know, a point of view, and I think it's really camp. It's really wonderful to see a film that had like a big push in the box office just be like unabashedly camp and scary, but mostly it's really poking fun at the genre that it's living in, which is my favorite thing when films get to do that. You know, like it's a bit meta and it knows that it's cheesy, but it makes it so far beyond cheesy that it becomes like
circles back around.
Yeah, and it becomes like a great watch.
Yeah, I think this is Stephen Sommers' like magnum opus, you know. Like
for sure.
I do like Deep Rising a lot, but it has its issues. But like he doesn't really capture this magic again because he does The Mummy Returns, he writes but doesn't direct The Scorpion King. Then he does Van Helsing, which here's the thing. I feel like
a lot of people look at it as a slightly inferior version of this film, and I might agree with them. That movie is also extremely campy. It has a lot of fun moments. I would just argue that whereas the CGI in this film is pretty good to, you know what, forgivable, the CGI in Van Helsing is unforgivable.
Yeah, I admittedly haven't seen it since theaters, but 2004, I was 15. My 15-year-old self knew that was a bad movie.
Yeah, but it's still kind of fun.
Oh, it's really fun. It's really fun. I think The Mummy is a really like joyful watch, to be honest.
Absolutely.
When I watched it recently, I hadn't watched it for like a long time, like I said, and it was just so fucking fun to watch it. And so like fun. Every single moment of it, just like, oh my God, you just, I forgot this bit. Oh, I forgot this bit. It's just, it's so good. It's an endlessly rewatchable film.
Oh God, yeah.
And I love it.
I think because I do still call this a horror movie. Like, I know it's more of an action-adventure movie, but I think there's enough horror here for me to call it a horror film. And I think it's one of those things where it's also such a big crowd pleaser. And this is like a rare horror film that I think brings together like so many different kinds of audiences, especially audiences who wouldn't normally go see a horror film. And I always get a kick out of that. You know, I feel like I'm sharing something with people that don't normally come to these types of things, and it's really enjoyable.
It's so good. Imagine if this was in like 4D or 5D or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It is, where like when the sandstorm comes, they like spray sand on everyone in the cinema and they like throw bees at everyone and like there's like scarabs everywhere and then there's like melted lava. Like it would be so funny. Like, what an intense experience. And you'd leave and you'd be like, fuck me, that was incredible.
The 10 plague experience, yeah.
Yeah, like the three of you that survived, you'd be like, wow, that was awesome.
Oh, wait, we're dying in the theater? Only three of us are going to go.
Throwing sand and bees at you.
I do want to say, though, Stephen Sommers has not directed a movie in over 10 years. No. His last movie was 2013's Odd Thomas with Anton Yelchin.
Right, I can't cope with the name of that film because my name is Rod Thomas, and it's just... I just can't cope with that.
Wait, how do you feel about Rob Thomas?
Which one?
I know, right? Which
the singer, the writer,
it's weird,
director.
Right? He obviously doesn't know who I am, but I used to like release music under my own name, Rod Thomas, and then it was very difficult to sort of avoid that thing. So I created the moniker Bright Light, and then he released an album called Bright Lights, and I was like,
"Oh, fuck off! Come on!"
I think he's trolling you.
I think he's trolling me. He's obviously jealous.
Maybe he wants to sex you.
He wants to have sex with me. He cannot.
It's like his love letter.
He cannot. Unless he was in The Mummy, he can't.
There you go.
He wasn't.
Joe, anything left to say before we close out?
Honestly, I mean, I think that this movie jokingly gets referred to as like the most bisexual film. Like it's become something of a meme at this point. And I don't have a problem with that.
Do you think it's bisexual or do you think it's just sexual?
Honestly, I would say the latter, but I think that bisexuals so infrequently get to see themselves or feel this directly connected to a film that I can understand why they may have latched onto it.
Because it makes the audience attracted to both sexes?
Yes,
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is like I was sexually attracted to Patricia Velasquez and Rachel Weisz in this movie, and I am gold star
This movie
gay.
confuses people, right? Like, oh, I don't know what I am anymore because... everybody's so fucking hot.
Like my entire sexuality was called into question when I watched this movie today.
Mine wasn't.
Okay.
I will say, but I definitely appreciate that experience. I definitely thought that they were hot.
Yes.
But at no point did I want to see their tits.
Okay. That is a good defining parameter.
But I thought they were fabulous. That's the definition of being a gay man, isn't it? I didn't want to fuck them, but I thought they were fabulous. Wow. Yeah, like it's a really hypersexual film, and I love it for that. I love the fact that it is that, and it's also so camp. And I don't think many films manage to do both of those things in tandem.
It's lightning in a bottle. Like I don't know. I said it 3 times.
I don't know if they tried
perfect
to.
blend of all those things.
Yeah. It's magic, and what they created is like a really unique experience as a filmmaker and a film watcher where it does do all of those things at once, and it shouldn't really have worked, and yet it does.
Yeah, just that. Yeah. And that's why I think we refer to it as like, oh, it's lightning in a bottle, because it shouldn't have worked. The fact that it works as well as it does, and the fact that, yeah, I mean, I'm sure somebody will say, oh, there's a couple of other films that capture the same kind of wacky energy and so on, but the reality is these films don't get made very often, and they don't get embraced to such a degree. all that
And they
often.
definitely don't make that much money.
Well,
Exactly.
and we certainly don't throw them $62 to $80 million budgets.
No.
Like, this would be too much of a risk. Because this is one of those ones where I'm surprised there wasn't they didn't know how to market this type story with it.
Right. Yeah. Well, the weird thing is people say, oh, well, because of stuff like this, then we move into things like X-Men and Spider-Man, and these kinds of action-adventure movies get obliterated in favor of superheroes, which is what we ended up having for about 2 decades.
Right. Well, and I mean, again, like The Lost City was an effort at that. There was another movie that came out after The Lost City that I actually thought was better, that was doing something very similar. And I can't remember what it was.
We've talked about it.
I know we've talked about it. I don't know what the fuck it was. And you know what? It's fine. I'll cut it out.
Oh, was it the Amy Schumer?
No, that's a bad movie.
Okay.
I like Amy Schumer and I like Goldie Hawn, and that is a bad movie.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Goldie Hawn, there is a little bit of like Bird on a Wire to this as well.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
I love
and I've
Bird
just,
on a Wire.
yeah, I love Bird on a Wire. And that's what I was thinking of when you were saying about like Jewel of the Nile or Mantle of the Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I said about, whatever film I referenced, it's Bird on a Wire. It's that, I think that the people making it obviously had like a deep reverence and love and nostalgia for that type of like 80s schlock, rom-com, high action drama.
Yeah.
And this film distills the essence of that into something which is like a little bit more modern and does it in a really cool way. It's fun, you know?
Yes.
It's fun.
The name of the game is fun.
Camp, fun, fabulous.
All right, everyone. Well, that has been The Mummy. And before we announce what we're covering next week, Rod, let everyone know, where can they find you and your music on social media?
You can find me absolutely everywhere on social media. My handle is brightlightx2, like times 2. And I'm on like TikTok, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. I post the music that I do. I post lots of film scores that I listen to. I talk about movies a lot, much to the chagrin of my label partners. And yeah, I'm stupid and silly, and chat to me about movies and pop music.
Yes, and be sure to check out his new album, Enjoy Youth, when it gets released on May 17th. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. If you want to chat with other listeners, please join our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you love us, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you love us and want to give us money, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you will get 306 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Hannibal Season 1, Episode 5, a double bill of Sting and Infested, Tarot, and The Strangers Chapter 1. Oh, and our brand new audio commentary of the month will be on Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell for its 15th anniversary.
Ooh, okay.
Can you just do me a favor? Can you say patreon.com one more time?
Patreon.com.
Every time I hear a commercial in America, it sounds like they're saying .com.
Oh.
That's
Every
OnlyFans.
every single time I hear Americans say .com, I hear .com.
That's amazing.
Every single time. The Jeff Goldblum adversary is like, blah, 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 .com. And I was like, is he doing that on purpose? But I feel like in your country where I now live, people just say .com.
Probably, yeah.
Which ties in very nicely to The Mummy, which is the most hypersexual film of all time. TheMummy.com.
You know, you put it in my head now, so I feel like I'm going to start saying .com
I
unintentionally.
really hope you do. I don't notice a difference from when you tried to say it to when you didn't.
Oh, no. Calm. It's like, I just dislocated my jaw like the Mummy, so good luck.
Great.
Amazing.
Joe.
Mm-hmm.
We have a film that's near and dear to my heart next week. What are we talking about?
This is true, yes. After a couple of weeks in 1999, we are leaving the anniversaries behind so that we can go and talk about one of the films that scared the fuck out of me when I was a kid. We're traveling back to 1967 to talk about the Audrey Hepburn classic, Wait Until Dark.
I love this movie so much. And here's the thing. There's only one real scare in it, and it's like the one everyone knows, but it's still really good.
Folks, if you listen to the Who Framed Roger Rabbit episode, you'll know what we're talking about.
Yes.
But if not, That's next week's problem.
Next week's problem. So until then, we can cross out The Mummy.
Indeed. And cross out horror queers.